as cities like Los Baños to support MCAG's goal of gathering more information on the community perspective on transportation.
Como podemos apreciar en la lámina y en las fotografías, nuestros líderes jóvenes y el personal hacen encuestas con los miembros de la comunidad en Merced y realizaron diferentes programas de enfoque en ciudades como Los Baños, al igual que en Merced, para poder apoyar todos estos esfuerzos para recabar más información sobre la perspectiva de la comunidad sobre el transporte.
That is all I have for today. Thank you for your time, and we're excited to see the results of this engagement.
Thank you so much, Susie. One moment, Susie. We just want to go ahead and recognize. You're quick, girl.
Gracias, Susi. Simplemente gracias por tu tiempo y nos da mucho gusto poder ver todos los resultados de este involucramiento. Y un segundito, por favor.
I want to recognize your organization as an organization that is up and coming in environmental justice and the work that you're doing as a whole. And I want to really consider Jesse, your director, and the work that he's done, even in the city council. And I laud your organization because we need youth. And I'm all about sustainability and succession. And there's not much we can do if you don't hold up the narrative. So thank you for the work that you're doing. And I'd like to open it for public comment.
Simplemente quisiera tomar esta oportunidad para hacer un reconocimiento de YLI, una organización que se enfoca en la justicia ambiental. Gracias por el trabajo que están haciendo en lo general y también quisiera yo reconocer y particularmente también al director por el trabajo que ha hecho el director en el Consejo Citadino y también como parte de esta organización. Eso es lo que necesitamos a la juventud. Apoyo los sucesores, apoyo la sustentabilidad y eso no se puede hacer si no tenemos el apoyo de la narrativa de ustedes y ahora podemos ver si hay algún comentario del público.
I have a public comment.
¿Comentario del público?
There is no public comment at this time.
No hay comentarios.
I just wanted to address you and say thank you for coming today. And we're doing our part, but you are our future. And we believe in you. And please keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Simplemente quería hacer un reconocimiento. Quiero tomar la oportunidad para decir gracias por estar con nosotros el día de hoy. Estamos haciendo nuestra parte, pero ustedes son nuestro futuro. Creemos en ustedes y por favor sigan con este buen trabajo. Gracias.
And we have one more comment from member Randy Van Dyke.
Thank you. I also wanted to thank you for coming and sharing and appreciate all the work you do to engage the community in the regional planning process. I know it could be challenging to engage folks in like a multi-decade planning process. Appreciate all that you do that, and recognize how important it is for community members to be involved in shaping their transportation future. So thank you for your leadership. Appreciate it.
Simplemente ahora vamos a tener un comentario de Randy y quiero decir que agradecemos todo el trabajo que han hecho ustedes para involucrar en el proceso de planeación a la comunidad. Sabemos que puede ser en ocasiones algo retador poder lograr esto porque estamos hablando de un plan de programación que implica varias décadas, pero reconocemos la importancia que tiene la participación de la comunidad para darle forma al futuro del transporte. Gracias por tu liderazgo.
Hi, Member Alvarado, echoing my fellow colleagues' comments, but also I run a small business, WomenWise, and the YLI has been the most supportive folks. And I really want to encourage the images that you guys put online, and that accessibility for that cycling is fun to see. So I just wanted to compliment your work.
Thank you so much.
Yo también quisiera reconocer el trabajo que han hecho. Simplemente estoy de acuerdo con los comentarios de mi colega, pero quiero agradecer el trabajo que YLI ha hecho apoyando a la gente. Quiero decir que se reconoce en las imágenes que nos mostró de accesibilidad y simplemente es la oportunidad de reconocer su buen trabajo. Gracias.
Thank you, Susie. And you're free to go. Thank you. I know you have to get to your school. So sorry. I forgot about that.
Gracias, Susi. Te liberamos. Sabemos que te tienes que ir a la escuela. Gracias.
Thank you. And now if we can go ahead and have your director, Max Sayo, por favor. Gracias. Thank you.
Ahora
I
continuamos
just
con el director Max Siles, por favor.
I wanted to thank you so much for the work that you're doing in District 10. I'm not biased at all. I live here, so I also sit on the BPAC, so I am even more thrilled to have you highlight some of the work that is being done through the BPAC. Merced, typically, perdón, I forgot. And I'm an interpreter, sorry. Go
Bueno,
ahead.
pues ahora damos la oportunidad para la traducción. Simplemente quiero agradecer por el trabajo que están haciendo con BPAC en el Distrito 10. No estoy sesgada, yo vivo aquí y también soy parte del BPAC. Por lo tanto, me siento emocionada de permitir y escuchar todo el trabajo que dices que se ha hecho a través de BPAC. Merced típicamente es un lugar que, pero bueno, ahorita continuamos.
So typically, we've seen a lot of changes in this community, and we've not often been engaged. I also I sit on the Planado in Action Committee, and we were part of the process with Cultiva la Salud at the time, bringing in the roundabout rotunda, and had many sessions with Caltrans out in the community hall. So again, going back to the idea that something could start and it takes sometimes years for it to come into play. And so this is kind of exciting that I'm actually still here, and I'm going to be able to share in the celebration of those efforts. So thank you so much. I also have it under authority from our meetings that, you know, the corridors in Los Pianos and that sidewalk project is going to provide access to many people that have been walking on very dangerous corridors and streets. So that is something else to be commended, and thank you for those projects. I do hope that you and I can engage better and have better communication, since I am connected to so many different communities here in Merced and in Stanislaus. And I also want to thank you for the bridge in Modesto that we're going to be modifying as well, longstanding.
I'm sorry, just a reminder, it's very difficult for the interpreters to convey all of that information accurately. If we could keep it down to about 30, 40 seconds, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so sorry.
Continuamos con la traducción. Sobre Merced, queremos hablar sobre algunos de los cambios que hemos visto en la comunidad y por el involucramiento que hemos tenido. No, también me encuentro como miembro de otros comités en donde también trabajamos con Cultiva la Salud en aquella época, en donde podemos también hemos realizado con Caltrans algunas sesiones con la comunidad. Una vez más, todo esto nos lleva a la idea de que algo puede iniciar y en ocasiones se tarda años en que esto ya rinda frutos. Por lo tanto, pues después de tanto tiempo, aquí sigo presente y he podido atestiguar y he podido también pues agradecer y celebrar por todos estos esfuerzos. Mil gracias por todo ese trabajo. También quiero decir, con base en la autoridad de las reuniones en el corredor de los planos y también ese otro proyecto que se hizo con la acera dará acceso a muchas personas que tienen que caminar por corredores y calles muy peligrosas. Ahora tendrán esto. Gracias, los felicito, gracias por todos estos proyectos. Además, yo espero que podamos involucrarnos y poder tener una mejor comunicación, ya que yo estuve muy vinculada con las comunidades de Merced y también quiero agradecerles por el tema del puente en Modesto que estará teniendo una modificación.
And I want to thank our interpreters for being very gracious. I know I speak a lot real fast, so we speak Spanish super fast and in English, I have no problem with me either, so thank you.
Agradecemos a los traductores por seguirnos el paso, ya que hablamos a 1000 por hora.
Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to ask if there's anyone online that requires interpretation.
Queremos preguntar si hay alguien en línea que requiera traducción.
I'm not seeing anyone with their hand raised.
Thank you. Is there
No vemos a
anyone?
nadie.
Hi, I just wanted to thank the work that's going on in District 10. You guys have been working with Patricia Pratt, Creepy Kawaii. The work that you've been doing with that artist has been inspiring work in District 6. Also, those mosaic tiles are gorgeous. And we just talked about economic justice being a pinnacle integrating into the work that we're doing. And so to speak on behalf of the artists that you're supporting, you're doing some Central Valley work that is doing collective wellness. So on behalf of the South Valley, thank you to you, Patricia Pratt, Creepy Kawaii. I hear she's got a shop downtown. So thank you.
Thank you.
También quisiera tomar esta oportunidad para agradecer por el trabajo que se ha hecho en el Distrito 10 contra Patricia Pack y todo el trabajo que han hecho con estos artistas. Ha sido muy inspirador, al igual que en el Distrito 6, así como los azulejos maravillosos. Y también la justicia económica es importante para integrarla a nuestro trabajo, hablar a nombre de los artistas que están apoyando con el trabajo de Central Valley. También trae bienestar colectivo. A nombre de el South Valley, Patricia, Kuwai, muchas gracias a todos por el trabajo que han hecho.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask if there's anyone in the room that requires an interpreter.
Quisiéramos preguntar si hay alguien aquí en el salón que requiera a un intérprete.
Okay, seeing that there is no one needing and requiring an interpreter, we're going to go ahead and move to English. And if there should be anyone that needs interpreting, please advise us on whether you're online or if you are in person and you come into the room and you require an interpreter. We want to make sure that we are providing interpretation for those that need it.
Vamos a continuar con la sesión en inglés. Si alguien requiere interpretación en línea o en la sala, por favor, háganoslo saber para continuar con el servicio de interpretación.
And just to clarify, you will not need the interpreter, so they'll be on standby, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move to Member Rousey, who has a comment.
Thank you. I really love hearing about the art projects and your work. I'm wondering if you can make sure that there are links to where those art pieces are, locations they are. I live in Oakland, and we have murals everywhere. And I saw a group of seniors going from mural to mural downtown Oakland. And I just would really like to see that for your district, and so that there's like a path of murals that and where they are, so that people have access to them, and so they can go, like the seniors, they asked me to take their camera and take a photo of the group. So it's really sweet to see, and I like to see that for your district. So
Thank you. That is a very good tip. We'll take a look at it.
Any other comment, whether online or in the room?
I am not seeing any public comment online.
Okay, well, I just want to say thank you for coming and greeting us and giving us all an update on our community that we're visiting here in Merced, California. I also want to say thank you for all the elephants. I always say the elephants are so
woolly
beautiful.
mammoths.
Yes, the woolly mammoths. And when I first saw them, I think that it was the most beautiful, intentional approach to recognize the people that live in the community. And I hope that we continue those efforts. And we have many opportunities in the community that would love to participate. I know you have your DEI group, but I can link you up to a bunch of people, whether they're horsemen. In this region, we have a lot of agriculture, horsemen, Andalusians in particular, that we have a major breeder that is even represented in Spain and has an annual event here in Merced. And just seeing the work that we're committed to and seeing the representation of the cultures and the people that reside and use these thoroughfares is quite a coup for us as an organization and for us as a dais to be able to be part of and witness the changes in our communities. And just like Member had indicated, Alvarado, we were so moved to see what you've done and how that participation has trickled down to other districts. So thank you again. And we honor you for coming.
Thank you. And if, any time that you feel that there is more needed from us, from our staff, please do not hesitate to call. And I double checked my slide with my executive team. I made sure their phone numbers are on there. So you have a copy of the slides. Please give us a call.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we will move on to tab 6, and that's their interagency updates. Tab 6 is our interagency updates, where we'll hear from all 3 of our supporting teams, starting with our open application period and the 2026 meeting calendar. With that, I will pass it on to Sasha Linker to start our updates.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Sasha Linker with the Transportation Commission. I believe we have some slides. Next slide, please. Okay, the application period for the next round of committee membership closes on October 9th.
Sasha, could you speak up a little bit?
Okay, the application period for the next round of committee membership closes on October 19th. We are currently working to fill 3 open seats. The link to the application form can be found in the agenda materials related to this item, as well as on the Commission's website. Next slide, please. The interagency staff team is pleased to announce that our 2026 EAC meeting calendar has been finalized. In 2026, we will host meetings around the state and are very pleased that we will also be able to continue to offer virtual options for those who may need it. Next slide, please. All right, I will now pass it to Allison Joe from CalSTA.
Thank you. I'm also going to be mindful of just the fact that the ASL interpreter also requires a little bit slower speech as well, and some pausing. Allison Joe with the State Transportation Agency. From the advisory opportunities we identified throughout the year, we're looking at a couple of updates that we have been doing over the last couple of months. We mentioned some of them in our September meeting, and we've been talking about them at our in our subcommittees. I do want to note the one major update that is coming through, but is not completed yet, is the work of the Transit Transformation Task Force. As you recall, this is a body that has a lot of voices representing transit stakeholders from across the state, agencies, funders, writers, other advocates, and we are really hoping that that process, which has taken a little more than a year and over several meetings, has yielded some really good, thoughtful recommendations that will be presented to the legislature at the end of this month. Our final meeting occurred at the end of September, and so staff are writing the report right now, and also hope to bring it back to the EAC and a subcommittee in November, just to share their recommendations. From that is the bulk of the work that we've done in terms of the advisory opportunity, but I would be remiss if I didn't actually mention something that was announced by the agency today. Today, the State Transportation Agency, in partnership with the California Health and Human Services Agency, CalHHS, signed a new joint policy, Secretary's policy on road safety, which commits California to a prevention approach to eliminate fatal and a safe systems approach to eliminate fatal and serious traffic injuries, and to introduce a new road safety standard. The announcement was made today, so I have fairly limited information, but I can certainly share that with the group, and we look forward to bringing that back to you all in December at your meeting in Riverside. With that, I will close, and I appreciate you all for being really engaged in the conversations we've been having at agency, with amazing questions and really good, thoughtful partnerships in the work that we're doing. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Carolyn Abrams, Senior Advisor for Transportation Equity in the Caltrans Director's Office of Equity and Tribal Affairs. I just want to provide a quick update on the Caltrans advisory opportunities that the committee has been working on this past year. So as you'll see on this screen, there are 3 items that are currently moving through the subcommittees. We have the statewide community engagement playbook that our community engagement subcommittee has provided feedback on, and members can expect the staff from Caltrans to return in 2026 with an update on how that feedback was incorporated into the playbook. We also have our director's policy on transit. This policy has been brought to our transportation planning subcommittee, and they will return to the November subcommittee meeting to discuss the implementation plan and receive subcommittee member feedback in that process. And then we also have our equity index use case development, which is being worked on by our data implementation subcommittee. At this point, that subcommittee has received a in-depth technical presentation on the tool. And at our next November subcommittee meeting, we will be discussing some further development of use cases and how that tool will be integrated into our Caltrans processes. Today, what you can expect to hear, which you'll see on the agenda, is an informational presentation on our Complete Streets efforts at Caltrans, which was a member request. And you will also be receiving a presentation about a new advisory opportunity as Caltrans works to update the California Freight Mobility Plan. So that presentation is coming today as well. So with that, I will close and pass it to Sequoia.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Carolyn, and thanks to the team, and thank you to members. I'm Sequoia Erasmus. I serve with the California Transportation Commission as the Associate Deputy Director of Equity and Engagement. And as has been echoed by my colleagues on the dais, we really deeply, like beyond deeply appreciate all of the support and efforts and energy and advisory genius that all of you continue to provide to us. I couldn't have imagined where we would be today a few years ago. So just thank you. Thank you so much. I want to supply some updates from on the commission end of our 3 agency team. So first off, I want to note that the Vehicle Weight Safety Study Task Force is holding a virtual meeting on Wednesday, October 29th, beginning at 11 a.m. And committee members and members of the public are welcome to attend. And more information on this task force can be found in the meeting materials. For time's sake, I'll encourage you to check those out. But after the task force finalizes its findings in November, commission staff will return to the committee with an informational update summarizing the findings at the December 2025 executive meeting and solicit any additional feedback from committee members. So again, more info can be found in the meeting materials for this item. Next, I want to highlight the Active Transportation Program Technical Advisory Committee, which we're highlighting it as an action-oriented body that supports the commissions and Caltrans management and delivery of the Active Transportation Program. And at today's meeting, staff will bring forward a recommendation for a committee representative to serve as a subject matter expert and liaison to the, we're calling it ATP TAC, or the Technical Advisory Committee, for a 2-year term. So members who are interested will be asked to fill out the application for the Technical Advisory Committee, which will then be reviewed by the Active Transportation Program staff, and a member will be identified through that process. More information and discussion will follow in our next meeting item in tab 7, but I wanted to highlight that that's upcoming. And finally, we will have Active Transportation Program guidelines briefings for all other committee members who are interested in participating and supporting the work of the Active Transportation Program. The program team is offering a focus opportunity for members to advise on updates to the guidelines for the 2027 program, which is also known as Cycle 8 of the program. And that program staff will share the opportunity with members via email following today's meeting. So those are the updates on the commission end of things, and that concludes my updates, and I will pass it back to you.
Thank you so much, Sequoia. This is Vice Chair Gonzalez. And at this time, before we move on to tab 7, we are calling for a 10-minute break to give our members and staff. Oh, yes, sorry. Public comment on tab 6.
For public comment, I'd like to call on Joe Grizzly Bear. Please unmute yourself to begin your comment.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Eagle Grizzly Bear. I'm the president of Utah Nation, United Tribes of California, residing out of Merced, California. The nonprofit. What we do is we bring all the tribes together as unity. So I can connect with all the Monos, Miwoks, Yokuts, and all of them. And so there's nobody stationed here in Merced. Do we have a translator that's going to do all that, or do I have to wait, or not? Can I keep speaking? No translators?
There's no
Okay.
translator right now. You're free to speak.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. But no, what I was just would like to see out here for Caltrans when you guys are making your bridges and those things, a little bit of representation of our people, maybe some basket work or designs. Like when you go into Arizona, you could tell that natives live there because there's when they build their bridges and like when you go to Reno, you'll see like different sculptures of native art. Just recognizing our people, and it'd be nice to see that in California, because you know what, there are a lot of our tribes here still, and instead of having like a mammoth up there or some ducks and stuff like that, it would be nice to see some of our basket work or some of our designs and stuff like that. And our organization is willing to work with you guys to give you these designs or work with your local tribes. There's so many tribes in every city, and I encourage you guys to work with us to acknowledge us a little bit on these roadways and stuff, because it's very.
Thank you, Joe. Your time's up. We apologize. So now at this time, any other public comment? Oh,
There's no other public comment at
okay.
this time.
I just have one thing to say. I want to thank you, Joe, for coming online. And we recognize United Tribes of California as a contributing organization that helps bring in tribal recognition for those that are not federally recognized, as well as those that are recognized. And we thank you for your contributions and your diligence in bringing recognition. And here in the city of Merced, we have had land acknowledgements that were brought forward by the United Tribes of California and their efforts into bringing that idea and narrative for our people. So we thank you for being online, and we thank you for your comments. Aho.
I wanted to thank you also, Joe, for your attendance. It's nice to have so much community support today and feedback. Please continue to follow us. Chair and myself have been working on the vision, mission, and founding principles. There's going to be a visual component as well. We have your information, and we are all active in our communities. So the hope is to continue to foster and collaborate with our tribal communities to have representation. So thank you so much.
All right, anyone else? All right, break time. 10 minutes.
And we begin our meeting. Everyone present. Continuing with the Interagency Equity Advisory Meeting in Merced, California. We are on tab 7, discussion and possible action to approve Equity Advisory Committee member representation on the Active Transportation Program Technical Advisory Committee. Item 7 is any discussion and possible action to approve Equity Advisory member representation on the Active Transportation Technical Advisory Committee. I will now pass this on to Sequoia, and you will be receiving the presentation for this item.
Are we okay to proceed? Do we have enough folks? Okay, great. Members, as mentioned in tab 6, I would be bringing the opportunity for members to learn about and potentially approve a member for representing as a liaison on the Active Transportation Program Technical Advisory Committee. For a little further context, the Active Transportation Program Technical Advisory Committee is an action-oriented body that supports the commissions and Caltrans management on and delivery of the Active Transportation Program. Its mission is to maximize the program's effectiveness in meeting statutory goals, which include increasing walking and biking trips, improving safety and mobility for non-motorized users, advancing greenhouse gas reduction goals, enhancing public health, and ensuring disadvantaged communities fully benefit from the program. The member that participates in this technical advisory committee will be asked to attend up to 4 meetings of the technical advisory committee per year. I believe that 3 are virtual and 1 is in person, and potentially support with subcommittee work on the technical advisory committee. This person will be serving as a liaison of the committee on the TAC, and so this kind of vote is to ask and approve a member to represent the committee as a subject matter expert on the TAC. So it might be a little confusing, and I'm happy to break it down further if anybody has any questions. But the term is for 2 years, and any interested members are encouraged to submit an application to the Active Transportation team, and the interagency staff team will work with the Active Transportation Program team to identify the member best suited for involvement to serve as a liaison with the Technical Advisory Committee. So the action that we ask is for for the committee to approve a committee member liaison to serve as a representative on the Active Transportation Program Technical Advisory Committee. This vote is to approve membership, not necessarily the person involved yet. And that is the action. So would anybody like to make a motion?
I would love to promote that and make a motion as such. I am not going to repeat everything you just said,
Okay.
but I do make a motion to approve that.
Okay.
I second that.
So Justin, will you call a vote? Oh, if there's any questions, sorry.
I want to allow time for questions. I know that you've already approved the motion, but there's some of us that may want to know more about what is entailed, or if they're interested also in applying for said role. And Howard Wong has his hand up. So let's allow some time for that so that can be vetted out. Thank you. Member Vice Chair Ana Gonzalez, por favor. Thank you.
Howard.
Okay. How long has this advisory committee been in existence? How many members does it have? And what are the types of people that serve on that advisory committee?
Member Howard Wong says, how long has this organization or group has been in existence? And more information as to how one has been part of that.
Or what type of members are on that committee?
And what other members are on that committee?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Anya Allenbacher, I manage the active transportation program at the commission. So the ATP Technical Advisory Committee has been in existence since, I believe, cycle 1 or cycle 2, which is around 2014, 2015. And currently, I believe there are about 30 or 40 members. There's quite a few representing all geographic regions in California. We also have quite a few advocacy groups. There's, I can't name all of them off the top of my head, but just as an example, there's members from different bike advocacy groups from the Safe Routes Partnership. There's members representing CalWalks, and also other fields such as health and safety and different viewpoints like that, I would say. I don't know. Was there one more question? I feel like I'm missing one.
Howard, was there another question? Just want to make sure, because it's really hard to hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that pretty much is good information. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll hear from Member Vice Chair Ana Gonzalez.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted some clarification. So this is an application process, and I believe you mentioned it would be the ATP staff that will make the selection. So then when will the committee get an update? Will this be at the next meeting in Riverside, or how long will it take for us to know who the selected person is?
Yeah, so we have a pretty informal process on the TAC, and I think we could probably have a decision if we get all the interested members for an update at the December meeting. I think that's possible. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then I believe, sorry to
Go
help
ahead.
answer that question. I believe the intention is for them to start in somewhere around January.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then really quick, is this how other, like you mentioned, other agencies are involved? Is this usually how folks are selected, or is this just a unique process for the EAC?
It's a much more formal process for the EAC. I think we do have calls for members as needed. We have not had, we don't have one open currently for other member groups. A lot of times when there's staff turnover at a different, like for example, at CalWalks or Safe Routes Partnership, if there's staff turnover, then another staff person will just take that position to represent that viewpoint and that agency. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. And then one more. So at the point where when we make the selection, will there be like a specific tab item to provide feedback or provide summaries or something in our future meetings at the EAC, so that member is given an opportunity to present and given enough time to, is that the goal?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right. Any other questions from any of the other members? We have staff member Ali online. Staff member Ali. And then I have, yeah. If you can unmute.
Okay, it looks like I can unmute now. Sorry about that. It was I was unable to unmute myself for a while. But good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alidor Westbrook, and I work at Caltrans headquarters. in our Division of Local Assistance, Office of State Programs, and I staff the Active Transportation Program Technical Advisory Committee. So she's here to support Anya and team if there was any additional questions. I think she did a fantastic job though, so I have nothing too much more to add, but just wanted to respond to Commissioner Wong's question about who's represented on the TAC currently. We do have a web page that lists all the current members of the ATP TAC. So if you're curious, who is already a part of this group, you can find that information online, and I'll make sure that Sequoia has a link to that page that can be distributed for you all. But yeah, I'm here if there's any additional questions. But yeah, thank you again for just letting me chime in here really briefly. And I'm really excited to start working more with you all at the EAC.
Well, I want to thank you both for being here. It really allows us to have those opportunities to ask those questions directly. I myself have worked on AT projects in the Walnut corridor here in Winton, California, in this county, and I am very happy with the work that the ATP does. One of the things that I always laud and commend the ATP for is that you have an educational component to the work that you do. Many times we have infrastructure that needs to be brought into a community. However, we don't have the opportunity to be able to vet out that educational piece to that infrastructure. And I've had the privilege to be a recipient of grant funding for both. So it was really a beautiful fit. And I'm hoping that as we broaden the funding pool, and hopefully it will get bigger. We're praying for that. There are many projects in this county that I would like to see and be brought to light. And I would be remiss if I don't mention the corridor along Martin Luther King. Very dangerous for many pedestrians and bicyclists out there. And it's a joint effort. Oftentimes we think of only one jurisdiction, but we also know that Caltrans works directly with local jurisdictions to bring projects forward. And this is something that I would love to see along the 11th Street area right there, maybe a walkway over a crosswalk, that we would be able to have, because children cross that intersection and families cross that intersection, either if they're going to school or coming into town. And then at the end of the corridor of 59 and Martin Luther King, that opportunity is there for creating more of a buffer for slowing down, because many folks come right off of that freeway and they don't slow down, and many accidents happen. And consequently, I know that there are many folks that would like to see that, and as well as a project that you're already working on in Planada by bringing that rotunda, and that will help people slow down in those areas. So I just want to thank you for being here and continuing your work in the active transportation program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other members online that would like to make comment? And this is your chance for your own community. Is there public comment?
Not seeing any public comment at this time. Thank you.
All right, well then we'll go back to where we were originally focused on bringing this item to the committee. I have a motion that was given by Member Rousey, and it was second by Member Akimi Hernandez. And so now I'll pass it over to Justin so that he can go ahead and do the round of roll call for votes.
Thank you, Chair. I will now call the roll. Carrie Akimi Hernandez.
Aye.
Lisa Marie Alvarado.
Yay.
David Acevedo.
Yes.
Abamel Chavez Hernandez. Vice Chair Ana Gonzalez.
Aye.
Gloria Huerta.
Aye.
Naomi Iwasaki.
Aye.
Peggy Martinez. Andres Ramirez.
Aye.
Michelle Rousey.
Aye.
Lauren Simon, Randy Torres Van Vleck,
Aye.
Pualani Vasquez,
Aye.
Howard Wong,
Aye.
Chair Martha Armis Kelly.
Aye.
Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. And now we know that we will be in contact with you, and hopefully we'll be able to produce that person or persons that are interested in participating, and we'll hear some updates in the future. I want to thank you for being here. Right now, we're going to move to tab 8, which is the committee member reports. Tab 8 is for committee member reporting. And any members who would like to give their verbal report or written, many have given the opportunity to submit their formal reports or informal reports here in presence. And I want to give you an opportunity, and I want to kind of cajole and kind of stimulate conversation. A lot of times when you're not here, sometimes we feel like we can't really present ourselves or represent ourselves. And I want to encourage you, if you're online, it doesn't take a lot, just a few things that you're doing and what you're working on, anything that you feel that is important that maybe we're not looking at, your recommendations. This is a great opportunity for you to report back on what you've seen. If you were privy to a jurisdiction that we were at on tour and you were able to see some significant things that you learned or that you'd like to share with the group, and remembering that everything that you provide as a member creates that tapestry that we're always talking about, and how to make this a rich and robust committee. And part of that is communicating. So please feel free to speak up. And I know I don't have to worry about most of us here, but I want to offer it first online. And I say that with all due respect because I love to talk to. And I just want to open that up for those folks that are online. And we're going to give you that first consideration. So members, I know that for a fact, Andres has something to say because he was out doing the most out in our state. And I was witness to that. So I'm going to probably mention that in my report, but I'd like you to talk, Andres. So I'm going to call you out, Andres.
Thank you, Chair. You want me to report? Okay. Recently participated in the Clean Mobility Forum that was organized by CARB. I believe it was last week or 2 weeks ago. And it was a really good space discussing, best practices for clean mobility projects in high need communities in Central Valley, in the Bay Area, in Southern Cali. Some of the topics that were brought up was the need for more robust investment in community engagement and the significance of community engagement for successful projects to move forward. And there were so many different examples of car shares, bike shares, of that programs of that type that have been successful, that had community engagement as a cornerstone to the work that we're doing. Another conversation is also accountability for programs in terms of the effectiveness of what they were trying to do. There was a conversation of a lot of companies that have taken advantage of a call on or a focus on doing equity focused projects, but have not been as good at producing equity in those projects. And so having a real conversation with CARBs and the different agencies that were in the room about what accountability from funders looks like in terms of assessing the impact through evaluation and such. But yeah, that's what I would like to share today.
Well, thank you, Member Andres. We really appreciate you being out in the community and raising the narrative for our voices that are really seeking earnestly and with much dismay as to how the funding is distributed and things of that nature. And so I just want to thank you for being there and bridging that gap for us. Any comments in Oh, yeah. But I want any comments to his. I want to address that, that we will work on getting those comms to be a little louder. And I think that in the future, I think that it's really important for us to do a check-in. And I know that some of you have your own work schedules, but we're going to have to work out a better way of doing an audio check prior to, just so that we can deflect some of those little creepy outcomes that happen sometimes, but we're working on them, and I appreciate everyone and their efforts. Next, we have Pualani Vasquez, member, and we welcome you. We would love to hear from you. We miss you.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I'm very sad that I'm not able to be there in person with you all today as well. I do want to first say a lot of the things that we talked about in this meeting are crucial to transportation safety and bringing our communities together. One of the previous commenters talked about incorporating artwork into the different landscapes that we have along our roads. And I think when we last were together in person, we really saw that come together, that artwork along the roadsides in great display, right, when we were here in San Diego. One of the things that we talked about were specific recommendations that we as the Equity Advisory Committee can put action towards doing when people apply for different grants with the state, is to make sure that, you know, they're standardizing equity in their review, that they're expanding eligible funding, that they're enforcing VMT reduction requirements, and aligning across agencies. Really, and most importantly, mandating community co-creation, which is that artwork piece that we talked about. I think, too, one of the things that is most concerning to the work that we do is the federal pushback to funding different projects that really prioritize our vulnerable road users. As we see money being pulled back through grants, we are going to be coming up short in our communities. I think being a part of different things such as the Active Transportation Program, the Technical Advisory Committee, which I'm also a part of, is a great way for us to be able to lift our voices and make sure, like Chair did mention, that we are incorporating the community into all aspects of our planning procedures. Super, super important. I think we can all see the ramifications of when this isn't done in the fullest, broadest view. An example of that is different transportation projects that are now being ripped out because the community doesn't understand the reasoning behind those transportation safety projects that were put in. And I think that that's it for me. I think that, you know, in California, there were a couple of different grants, that a couple of different bills that were just signed by the governor that are real wins for our safety moving forward. Because like I said before, you know, when we put forward safety for an 8-year-old, it's also good for an 80-year-old, right? It's good for all of us in bringing our communities together. Thank you.
Thank you, member Pualani Vasquez. And now we're going to move to David Acevedo, member David. Hi, David.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I had some trouble logging in today. I just want to make sure, is my audio okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Excellent. Hey, so great to see everyone. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. Just wrapping up a really busy legislative season for AARP, where I advocate for things including transportation for older adults and our communities there. And wanted to take the opportunity, if that's okay, please cut in if it's not. But I worked on a couple pieces of legislation that were signed by the governor that I believe is important to kind of update the committee on, and for things to kind of think about If that's okay, I'll go ahead and just
Please
kind of move
do.
forward.
Please do.
Great.
This is your time.
Great, thank you. So one of the bills that I worked on was Senate Bill 71 by Senator Scott Wiener. This cuts red tape for transit and active transportation improvement projects throughout the state. We're really looking forward to this. This kind of looks at the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, and for those who may not know, that kind of law gets in the way of a lot of transit and active transportation improvement projects and ties them up in kind of these really long, forever kind of arguments that may become legal. But as we all know, as we try to look at making things more walkable, bikeable, public transit friendly, those all have beneficial environmental impacts. And so we're really excited to see SB 71 be signed by the governor this week. Another bill that we worked on, also by Senator Scott Wiener of San Francisco, Senate Bill 63, that was a half-cent sales tax measure proposal that has now been approved by the governor. So it will go to voters in the 9 counties of the Bay Area to consider a ballot measure in November 2026 to increase a half-cent sales tax to fund public transit improvements in the Bay Area for a period of, I think, 14 years. And so I know this committee talks a lot about the need for funding, and improving the funding and resources for the kind of transportation projects we'd like to see in our communities. For those of you who live in the Bay Area, this is something to watch and monitor. And then a bill that passed actually last year, but that I'm part of a implementation crew working with our colleagues in Caltrans. And we actually just had a meeting about this. The bill is Senate Bill 960, another bill by Senator Scott Wiener. He does a lot of great work on transportation, if you haven't noticed. But this bill was passed last year and signed into law to require Caltrans to consider the need of people riding bikes, walking, and taking transit on our state-maintained roadways, many of which, as I'm sure many of you know, serve as local streets, thinking of like Highway 1, right, and 101, and a lot of small towns and many other similar kind of roadways and corridors. This was important because this we don't need to design any more kind of car-only corridors, especially as people are looking at cars as more expensive and unaffordable these days, and people just want to enjoy their main streets more, walking and biking and taking public transit. So we're helping Caltrans and being part of a kind of implementation crew to work with them on implementing it. One thing, though, that came out of a conversation there that I think is really important for all of us to consider is that, speaking of funding, SB 960 depends on something called the State Highway Operations, and I'm forgetting that it's, I think, program, State Highway Operation and Protection Program. So that's the State Highway System's Fix It First program, also known as SHOP, and it's the result of SB 1, if you all remember, many years ago, the ballot proposition approved by voters that raises revenue to fund repair and preservation, emergency repairs, safety improvements of our state highway system. And SB 960 depends on a very robust SHOP bucket. And what I learned that I think I'm trying to tell as many people as possible, because Caltrans was great in kind of explaining it, but I don't think it's getting out there very much yet. But a lot of our disasters that we as a state have been experiencing are eating into that SHOP revenue bucket. And it's preventing us from doing other transportation improvement projects, especially like the ones in 960, which is trying to make those main streets, those Highway 1s, Highway 101s, more walkable and bikeable and safer for people other than just cars. And a whole other host of potential uses for transportation funds. And one figure that we heard from Caltrans was that it's upwards of 20% now of the SHOP program is being used every year to fix emergencies caused by disasters and increased and more expensive disasters that we've been seeing. And so I just wanted to kind of spread that and socialize that, because I think it's really important for us as an EAC to know kind of where the funding picture kind of looks. And, the more information we know, I think the better as we advocate for our communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, David. The interesting thing about working on the EAC is that we come from different perspectives and we have different ideas of what our work is and how it's developing and how it takes shape in this state. So thank you for working on policy. We appreciate that. And next we have member Peggy Martinez, which is also online. Good afternoon, Peggy.
Anyone? Hello, hello, test, 1, 2. Hey, hey.
We
Can you
hear
hear me?
you. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you for responding. Hi everyone. I hope to see as many people in December as possible. I sort of miss being with you. And also I missed a good chunk of the meeting due to some unforeseen circumstances, and I'm also calling in and not being visible on video because of other tech stuff. So it's been an interesting day, but I'm happy to be here to tell you a little bit about perspectives from, sort of the disability realm or blindness, I'll just say at this moment. So I live in Caltrans District 1. But it's really, my report isn't blindness specific at all because everything that is being worked on affects lots and lots of people. So strike the whole blindness disability thing, I guess. Anyway, so we have the Pedestrian Bicycle Advisory Committee that is working on various projects in Humboldt, Lake, Mendocino, and I want to say Trinity County. Anyway, so basically a very large chunk of the state of California geographically, and we're being apprised of different projects, and our input is being sought on how these projects will affect pedestrians and cyclists. So that's a great thing. And I've mentioned that before. Though kind of a different bent, I think, that I want to discuss is this is kind of an issue in cities. This is not necessarily anything to do with Caltrans District 1, but I think it's important to bring up, and that is the fact that a lot of the primarily the scooter share, either the companies, the riders, there's a lot of irresponsibility in parking and in leaving electric scooters that are available for rent across the sidewalk, at corners, all across the walking, the pedestrian path. And I think it should be probably looked at in a more global sense. I don't know a lot about the various city sort of statutes or whatever is affecting or how it is that the disruptors of transportation, how they are being sort of held to account when their equipment is left unattended and in dangerous places. So not sure exactly what I'm asking the committee for specifically. Maybe it's something we agendize, maybe it's something we get a report on, but it's a problem. And my community has let me know that I should mention it here, so I've just done that. And that's really all. I just wanted to say that we're really enjoying our pedestrian bike advisory committee piece. And I appreciate everything I've heard today. David, your presentation, your discussion just now, super interesting. Anyway, there's a lot of great stuff happening, and I'm really happy to live in the state of California. So I'm done now. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Peggy. I want to go ahead and add to what you were saying about the technology. Oftentimes we have technology and we're super excited, but we don't know the outcomes or the ramifications of said technology. And that is part of that, the dangers of having those scooters left on the middle of the thoroughfares or on the sidewalks where people need to get through, and there is no way to move them once they're immobilized. It's hard for us, so we need to revisit that, and that is something that we definitely can be part of. And in discussion with safety, that would be one of those measures that we have to look at. Also, charging stations. We have the technology for charging stations, but I've seen how it can displace people from their apartment complex by going and charging and not understanding the technology and short-circuiting their home by charging on a amperage that's not suitable for EV charging. So and it's consequently had started a fire. So those are things that are real and happening, and we do need to address that. We do need to make our recommendations for that. It is something that the commission, I know, is has under their purview, but it would not withstand us reminding folks that that is something that is affecting our communities. So we'll make sure that we note, and tomorrow when I do give my chair's report, we'll be able to just make those comments on the different things that we were able to see. Now I would like to move it to the members here in our room, and we'll start with member Randy Van.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is member Randy Torres Van Vleck. I want to share 4 updates with the committee. 2 weeks ago, I had the honor of going to the Reconnecting Communities Summit in Washington, D.C. with San Diego delegation. Yeah, it was an incredible event organized by Reconnect Rondo, based out of St. Paul. And went with Janice Luna Reynoso, Executive Director of Mundo Gardens, Chris Olfato from Urban Collaborative Project based in Southeast San Diego, and 2 legendary leaders from San Diego. It was an honor to travel with them. Victor Ochoa, he's one of the founders of Chicano Park and has painted hundreds of murals at Chicano Park. He was there the day that the community took the space from the Highway Patrol and Caltrans in 1970. So it was an honor to be with him for a couple of days during the conference and walk the Capitol with him. Also, we went with Kasimu Harley, who worked at the Black Federation in the 70s. They stopped the California 252 freeway from being fully constructed in the 70s. And we're working with them on a Reconnecting Communities project. So great trip and inspiring to connect with the other leaders from across the country. A few weeks before that, Janice from Mundo Gardens and I traveled to Baja for a historic moment as well. We were invited by Mott Perjao, which is Kumeyaay community in Baja, south of the border, and they unveiled their reservation's flag for the first time. And so to be there for that moment when they erected the flagpole was really special. And that was on Kumeyaay New Year's. And so it was an honor to attend that event and to continue to build with our indigenous community in San Diego and involving them as well in the Reconnecting Communities project. I want to invite you all to San Diego, October 26th. The Ciclos Dias is back. It's our open streets event. This one's going to be in City Heights, where I live and work. And it's going to be on University Avenue, so commercial street with new roundabouts that just opened. They were funded by Highway Safety Improvement Program funds. The money was approved in like 2015, so finally being built 10 years later. Just a reminder how long it takes. But it was a Vision Zero corridor, statistically one of the most dangerous in the city. But it got widened sidewalks, so restoring the sidewalks to the original width before they were narrowed in the 70s and 80s to make space for more car traffic. So we're restoring the original sidewalk width, roundabouts, all in a vibrant commercial corridor. So come on down Sunday, October 26th, open streets event. I'll be there. Let me know if you want to connect in San Diego. And then another invitation, I do have to leave soon and go back to San Diego. So I'm going to share that our next community engagement subcommittee meeting is Friday, November 14th from 1 to 2:30. So please join us for that. We're going to be hearing about some feedback from SB1 evaluations, and we're working on another item Camila and I are discussing. But if you've got other ideas for the community engagement subcommittee, send them over. And we want that to be a space to continue to talk about how do we meaningfully engage our communities around Caltrans and statewide issues. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Randy Van Black. I just want to say thank you for what you do. I mean, like, I've been with you for almost 3 years, and the growth, you've jumped from a couple of different roles, and each time you don't blink. I mean, you don't miss a beat. And I just, like, I'm really proud of you, if I could say that. You just do so much. And we've also had the pleasure of being on some tours in some pretty wild places in California. And you just take everything in stride, and really, really are elevating the work in transportation, especially for our Indigenous families. And I don't think you get credit enough for what you do, so I just want to say thank you. All right, well, moving right along, and a safe trip if you're heading out.
Thank you. Yeah, great seeing you all. And I'll try to listen remotely on the phone for a bit. But yeah, thanks.
Take some treats with you. There's food back there.
Thank you.
To go. And then next we have Member Gloria.
Hi, Gloria Huerta. About last month, I went to the San Joaquin Valley Housing Summit in Fresno, where I talked about having affordable and clean transportation options in multifamily housing. In early October, I got to meet Andres in person. Oh no, we met in March. See, I keep forgetting now. I was at the Clean Mobility Forum and presented on probably the most boring thing, insurance, with car sharing. But I tried to make it fun. And it was really nice to be around the advocates. I think it's important to go to these conferences. You find your people. You also know who's there to try and like extract from communities. So it was really nice to connect with some of the committee members here. And then I am co-leading a car share working group with the Clean Mobility Equity Alliance. And the next session will be focused on the role of community engagement and resident involvement when creating equity-centered transportation projects. And I'm currently supporting with the launch of car share programs in California and New York State. If anyone here is interested in beta testing in Watsonville, it consists of free driving credits. Connect with me. That's all.
And once again, the fearless are out on the road doing many, many things. So thank you for supporting our EAC and your own community in the efforts for transmodal opportunities. And insurance may be boring, but I know a lot of us are paying a lot of money right now for insurance. So it's a hot topic in transportation, how to really mitigate some of those costs and hold some of those folks accountable for those costs, right? So thank you. Thank you for that. Now we have our member, Carrie. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to share a few highlights. So while we were in Chico, we had the honor and privilege to meet with Mashupta Tribal Chair Dennis Ramirez, and he was sharing some of the things that he's doing in community. And it was a short 2-day trip, but from there went to spend a little bit of time at California Indigenous Day at the Capitol and see 200 flags represented for the different sovereign nations here in California for unceded territory. And then I decided to take a drive all the way up into Humboldt County and to Trinidad Beach and meet with the Trinidad Rancheria and also the Yurok tribe and ask to pray for the whales there and the waters. I learned about important issues that are happening in the community, which I was not aware of. Apparently, there are wind turbines that are a project that they're trying to put on the coastline there that may impact environment. So wanted to raise awareness to that, as well as I found some gaps of coverage area. So essentially when you leave Willits before you get into Trinidad Beach, There is 2 hours approximately with no turnoffs, low visibility for lights, but there are signs for missing and Indigenous murdered relatives and women. And so I saw a connection there, and an opportunity to have call boxes or other ways, if God forbid you should break down on the side of the road, which I was really praying that that would not be me, and I made it safely there and back, as well as when I made my way over from Trinidad Beach into the Redding area and see the work of the Klamath Dam removal and restoration of the river. I also want to uplift that there is a wildlife corridor that's underway in Wairika. And then just, want to uplift our farm workers. They've been actively working here in our community year after year. And they support our agriculture community, but they are our lifeblood. They are our first responders, and they don't get a lot of acknowledgement for that, especially in these turbulent political times. So we're still relying on them to care for us. And so I just wanted to extend a sincere thanks for that, and want to uplift as well that we're the first state to have a reparations task force. And so very excited about that. A lot of great things happening. So just ways to find intersectionality between transportation, environment, indigeneity, and all of our, BIPOC relatives. And then just a mention of what's happening in Alaska. We don't have a lot of coverage right now, but there was a tsunami that hit and homes washed away. So we are all on the Pacific corridor, and what they experienced up there, we're experiencing down here. I noticed waves going to Alcatraz Island on Monday were very high. And so we're all at risk for that as well here in the Bay and the water region. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Member Carrie Hernandez. I just want to thank you for having that time that we were over there and being able to connect with folks. And I don't think that we really can understand unless you share time and break bread with some of these folks that we're seeing on the dais. They are so incredible, and to be able to see them in action and doing their work that they do, and just as a matter of fact, not anything intentional, just the way they are. That's just how they are. They carry themselves in a way that connects with folks and really draws out the connection and the intersectionalities of what we do, right? And in those spaces. So thank you. And I do want to also add on to the narrative for Alaska. Utah currently is in discussions of creating some type of network to take or send and communicate some coats, because they are really in dire straits. And if it affects them, it affects us as well. So thank you for saying that. Now we have Member Michelle Rousey.
Thank you. I wanted to bring up a couple things today, and I'm sorry I didn't give you like a prelude to
You don't
talking
have to do
today.
that. You are fine. We
Um,
appreciate you.
Oh, no problem. And it was brought up at my like on my committee and my meeting that I have monthly with the DACLAC, which is the Disability and Aging Community Living Advisory Committee. There are a couple things that were brought up yesterday in our transportation subcommittee that I want to make you guys aware of, and it actually, some of it actually affects us as a committee, and other boards and committees around the state, whether it be local or statewide. The Bagus Keene Act, it's something that governs how we run our meetings and how open to the public they are. And I want to push this over to Sequoia, because she's gonna like give it the update exactly on what's going on and what happened a few days ago with both.
Yeah, so I can give a quick update on, it was called SB 470, and we're very excited because as Member Rousey mentioned, it extends alternative teleconferencing provisions of the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act until January 2030. And the bill was signed by the governor, and it means that we can continue to offer hybrid and virtual meetings, making it very accessible for folks, and they don't have to notify their location publicly, especially if they're calling in from their home. So we're very glad. Thanks, Member Rousey.
It's still on?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, sorry. I don't know how many of you, how much that has affected any of you in your participation on committees or boards. But for me, that has been like a big access issue, whether it be about the Brown Act, which they also updated, and not having to open my home to the public to as a meeting place is such a crude way of saying opening my home to the public is really not is a major safety issue. And just to say that I'm able to attend whether I'm sick or not, whether I can attend in person or not, and it's still me be a member of those committees is very important. And I want to put a shout out to the governor for signing those because it really is important. And it's something that I've really pushed for well before even COVID, when we were like, it was like pushed into our faces that was needed more. Um, it impacts a lot of people. And in the meantime, a lot of advisory committees have like changed their bylaws and things to get around some of those rules to have access. And now this is an opportunity to set that right. So, I like I said, I want to thank the governor for signing those. We earlier today had a discussion about the transformation task force and the work they're doing. Well, on my DACLAC committee, some of the work that we've been doing the last few years, and here, even on the EAC, we were talking about the the needs assessment last year, and the need for funding and to be able to address those funding needs and those gaps in services and things like that. And I want to point out that even with that needs assessment that was done, the accessibility portion of that needs assessment was not done with numbers and estimates of what funding would be needed to make that happen. And once again, we've seen this happen for well over 20 years, that it's been tabled. It's like tabled, constantly tabled, the funding and assessment of what it means to have accessible needs for transportation addressed and what it's going to cost for us going forward. As we find ourselves in a situation of a lot of our transits needing additional funding and things like this, we should and need to address this as, as a equity issue and other issues that if we don't address it now, when will we? Are we going to keep pushing it off the table and not address those accessibility needs for our seniors and people with disabilities, which then also pushes that off to everybody? Because when you address seniors and people with disabilities needs and access, you're addressing everybody's needs in our society. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. And, you know, I really appreciate the work that you guys have allowed me to do while working on the committee. And thank you.
Thank you. I'm happy that you were at the meeting because I had it on my calendar, and when I saw it and had it already, it was like 40 minutes in, and I thought, I can't jump on. I should have come. And that's the thing. I need to remind myself that even just a little bit of knowledge is important, because sometimes it might be that moment that you get to interact and have that connection. So thank you.
Can I push the meeting real quick before I stop? Sorry. Second Tuesday every month, 4 p.m. The DACLAC Hazards Transportation Subcommittee, and everybody is welcome. Please come, because we're working on master plan for aging transportation issues, and we need the connections that you guys provide. We need those connections in our local areas and statewide. And so, and it is statewide, so it's not just your local that we're working on. And so we're going to continue some of the work on the master plan for aging, but also the transformation task force. We're bringing up some of the things that they're doing right now and moving that forward. And that's policy changes and things like that. So if you're interested in that kind of work, and I really would hope that some other people here would be, that you come join us monthly. And if you think something should be pushed at that level, please bring it to us and we can possibly have it on an agenda going forward. So thank you.
I thank you again. And mobility justice is so very important. I had Tamara Cobb. Hello, I'm going to send a shout out to you. 7 o'clock this morning. She's a very active member and right now of the community here in Merced, and she is experiencing some health issues, and she has very little mobility. And so she said that she could not come to this meeting today, but I wanted to shout out to her because she can't move around as quickly on the wheelchair, and she was having problems logging in as well. So we need to work on things, and even yourself, just looking at the infrastructure of space and making sure that they're compliant for anyone to be able to have access to. Those are important issues, and that's why Davina, she's always sending me the emails. She follows up very, very strongly. She's doing her work. She is like the advocate for that, and she's always reminding me that everyone in here can potentially become handicapped in one way or another. Yeah, well, then let me rephrase that. Well, can you share that with me, because I don't want to say the wrong word.
Okay, so handicap comes from a cap in hand type of a poverty type of thing.
Okay.
So the word is disabled or people with disabilities.
I
And
stand
so
corrected.
thank you.
And I appreciate that, because like that's why you're here too, to support me. And I just want to say that it's so important for us to recognize the fact that we all can be limited in our mobility, and at any time it could change for us. So if it's not in your purview at this time, someday you will need to get across that street and you will need assistance, or you may not have the same visibility or the same audio capability. So we need to always be reminded. And I thank you for being present and keeping us straight. So thank you, Sequoia. And now we have member Howard Wong. Thank you. You're up. There you go. You can unmute yourself.
Okay. Greetings.
Greetings. And if you can just get real close to your microphone, because the last time I heard you perfectly and then you kind of flew away.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I wanted to kind of remind everyone that the public transit crises that we're facing in the San Francisco Bay Area and California is also a national issue. Public transit has been attempting to recover from the COVID-19 ridership drops, and also has been expending all of its COVID relief funds and state funding, so that we're all facing, in many parts of the state and the country, potential severe service cuts at a magnitude that is hard to fathom. 40, 50% service cuts, elimination of lines, shortening of lines, curtailing of evening hours, weekend service. So we need to really continue to educate the general public and the voters that we have a significant population that relies on transit. Many low-income workers, low-income peoples, seniors, the disabled community, and others who have no cars. The good news is that this issue of funding is being grappled with throughout the nation. Many cities are on the verge of potentially enacting state funding, regional funding. San Francisco has stepped forward with some potential funding measures that are sustainable, not short term, but much longer term, including a Bay Area regional funding measure that will go on the ballot November 26th. there's a potential loan from the state to the Bay Area transit agencies in the tune of about $750 million. San Francisco is proposing a potential parcel tax. The good news is that there's a lot of funding, but the bad news is that there may be multiple ballot measures on the ballot at the same time in 2026. Meanwhile, transit agencies are enacting efficiencies, cutting costs, even unfortunately laying people off. But there's a greater need that needs to be addressed pretty quickly. So I think all of us who care about the opportunities of having robust options for how one is moving throughout their communities needs to continue to educate and support public transit. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Howard Wong. I just want to thank you for that. And yes, ridership has to come up, but we also have to look at safety and more opportunities for people to engage in those said transmodal opportunities as well. So I have Member Polani Vasquez with her hand up. Member Polani?
Yes, thank you so much, Chair. I do want to say that those are great comments, Howard, and I think, you really wrapped up a lot of people, but there's also a trend nationwide, not just in California, nationwide, where a lot of our younger motorists, younger road users are deciding to not become licensed, right? They're foregoing the licensure process and they are utilizing more and more public transportation. We see this in the graduated driver licensing process and those novice drivers getting older and older and older, which brings up a lot of other safety concerns. However, I also think when we talk about that ridership and we talk about public transportation, a lot of times that ridership is dependent on how often do those different buses or trains come? How convenient are the stops to my first place of getting on and my last place of getting off? And when we start to see ridership kind of wane, what happens is they start to cut off those stops. They start to decrease the amount of times that buses do make frequent stops. And so I think that it's important that if we want to get ridership up, that we maintain those quality service levels.
Well said. Well said. All right.
I don't know how this works, but is it possible to make a motion to talk about what Member Wong brought up and Member Pulani is speaking on? Because I don't know if we remember, but last meeting, myself and Member Rousey made these similar conversations of ridership, accessibility, quality of life, ability, and mobility. And I think for the sake of time, I was so excited to hear about the clean streets. And so can we house this to have adequate discussion on this in another meeting?
Definitely. I think if you make the recommendation that we add it to our agenda for our next meeting, we can do that. And you don't have to vote on it.
Okay.
I hear you, member. I'm all behind you. You don't have to vote on it. This is what we do. This is exactly what you do. You hear, you digest, and then you make your recommendations. And if we're all here, there's no reason for us not to be able to add it onto the agenda for the next time. And this is why it's also important when you have your member check-ins. I know that sometimes you don't think that they're really needed, but that's another opportunity for you to be able to just to talk to staff and get to just really get into the meat and potatoes of what you'd like to see. And then when we have our chair and vice chair meetings for our agenda, they make the recommendations and they say exactly what you've been saying. Like, this is what we've been hearing, or this is what we'd like to see because this is what the members have been saying. But when we don't get that, then we don't have that. And this is a good example of how hopefully in the future, all of you that are here that are planning on being chair and vice chair are seeing how it can be used for the benefit of the table as a whole. So thank you both for bringing that up, and thank you for a member Howard Wong and Pualani. I'm going to go ahead and close this discussion because we need to move on to the next item. But do we have public comment? Yeah. No, wait, let me finish. And I want to go ahead and ask staff if you can go ahead and take note of that, because that's something that I think that if it's brought up, we don't want to bicycle rack it or crosswalk it. We want to make sure that we bring it back into the group for a discussion. So thank you. And now, do we have any public comment online?
There is no public comment online. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, we originally had an update on legislative updates for our meeting, but that has been slated for another time. And as such, I want to let you know that there are several legislative updates that we've already heard some today. And during our discussions, since I could openly speak on this, during our discussions, we brought up, and myself and Vice Chair Anna feel it's important for us to have a space to be able to be briefed on legislative updates, because many times we're so siloed in our work, right? And we don't know about other bills that are out there or measures that are being actually moved. But we will not be able to discuss anything that's like we're promoting per se, but more something that's already been passed. So just to make that strong distinction. Our updates will be led in discourse for things that have already been voted into play, and not something that we are going to promote, because we're not here for that in this meeting. But again, moving right along to that, and that was tab 9 that has been pulled. We're moving right along to tab 10, which is Caltrans Complete Streets and Informational Presentation. Tab 10 will be an informational presentation by Susan Lindsay.
Chair Armis Kelly, if I could, just before we start that next one, I want to make sure I clarify and understand what your the conversation on the legislative updates. I know we weren't able to have that conversation today, but I'd like to be able to define and give some shape to what that looks like, because you all work in very different fields, and sometimes it's hard to track all of them, and our legislative team is pretty focused on very specific items, but not necessarily yours. So I want to be really thoughtful about how we define that and how we can support you. So that's, we may not need that conversation today, but I want to make sure that you all understand that this is something that we want to work with you on and help support in some way, but it may not be quite exactly everything that everyone needs. That makes sense.
And that does make sense. And I thank you for bringing that to our discretion. Oftentimes, and this is something that we all experience, and we've experienced, we have an idea, because of the work that we do in our spaces related to environmental justice, social justice, housing, air quality, water, land, mobility justice, and indigenous perspectives. And at the same time, we are all here organized under the umbrella of transportation. So I would only find it reasonable to request that if there's anything that is in transportation, that it would be conveyed to us in a space where we would be able to get that information in a timely or even well represented manner. However, I don't know how that would be, and I think that it'd be something that we would be able to take to another conversation, maybe offline. Not so much today, but maybe even in our chair's agenda, where we make that discussion and kind of wrap around that framework about how we could incorporate some of our take homes as well. So yes, I totally agree. And that is something that we will need to discuss further, but for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and move on to tab 10. But I take notice and I recognize your contribution as valid and much needed to really create that framework so that we stay within the confines of that discussion. Okay, so now tab 10, again, Caltrans Complete Streets Informational Presentation. The tab 10 will be an informational presentation by Susan Lindsay of Caltrans Complete Streets. And I will caution you, if you can hold your questions till the end, And please make sure that you allow for that discussion at the end. And again, Susan Lindsay, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully my microphone sounds good.
You sound great, a little robotic, but if you can get a little closer.
Okay. So we're going to talk today about, let's see, am I sharing presentation? Just checking in on that.
Yeah, if you have your presentations, you can share screen, I think.
Okay. All right.
Oh, our staff is actually doing that for you.
Oh, great. Okay.
You're on.
All right. Give it a minute here to come up. There we go. All right. So I'm going to talk about current status of complete streets at Caltrans. My name's Susan Lindsay, and I'm currently acting as our lead advisor on Complete Streets. I've been with Caltrans for a long time, and I've been working in the Complete Street space for the last couple years in our headquarters. Next slide, please. So we're going to cover quite a few topics, and then we'll take questions at the end. We left time for questions. So I'm going to just give an overview of Complete Streets at Caltrans, how our districts are involved. I'm going to talk about our key policies and plans. We have manuals and guidance for the state and local roads. There are several pieces of key state and federal legislation, funding sources for our Complete Streets projects, kind of the biggies. Our Complete Streets development process, how our projects develop, the different committees that are involved in our Complete Streets topics, further engagement opportunities for you all, and also available resources for people who want to do a deeper dive after this particular presentation. Next slide, please. So Caltrans, we have Complete Streets now at Caltrans in almost every division. In our planning and modal programs, that's kind of our front end planning documents. That's where I'm currently sitting. We have a lot of tools to identify needs. We have a lot of data around where we're missing facilities or where we have, different types of facilities around the state. We work closely and partner with the CTC's Active Transportation Program and provide local agency technical assistance. Then we have project delivery. That's doing most of our design, also putting out our design guidance and training on how to design these types of projects. It's also where we currently manage our bicycle and pedestrian assets and kind of that are on the state highway system, taking care of, their kind of what we have, the condition it's in, programming new projects for repair. Then we have our maintenance, traffic operations, and safety programs, and they also do training and guidance for maintenance of Complete Streets facilities. They manage a lot of they manage our mobility hubs, which are like, our transit stops that have more than one mode. So the kind of the bigger transit stops where you might have parking and bus or light rail, you have more than one thing coming together. And then they also handle our bicycle and pedestrian safety needs on the state highway system, make recommendations and program work around safety. And then we have our director's office where we have our kind of our overarching strategic policy and tracking and reporting happening. So we really have Complete Streets at this point kind of interspersed throughout our agency and I would say we've been working on that for the last 5 or 6 years pretty successfully at this point, have ourselves integrated. Next slide. So specific to the district's Complete Streets coordinators, every district now has at least one Complete Streets coordinator. They play a variety of key roles, but they're definitely the person in each district with the most Complete Streets knowledge. They work with the project development teams and make recommendations on facilities and support on both what's already built in their districts, but also identifying what needs to be built. They're involved in the early planning and initiation of Complete Streets projects, kind of elevating locations into ongoing work or programmed work. They assist our asset managers who basically program our 10-year plan for projects that we construct. They also work on our Complete Streets decision documents, and those are documents that are tracking both what we're building on Complete Streets, but also reasons why we're unable to build Complete Streets facilities in areas with need. Those decisions now elevate to our headquarters, and starting in the end of this year will be publicly posted if we have projects that are building where we have Complete Streets needs and we're not able to accommodate those needs. We'll have public information posted on our websites. on, starting this winter around, why that's happening, what's going on with those projects. They also assist with local agency projects and partner with local regional stakeholders. So they're really kind of your initial entry into Complete Streets in any district. Quite a few of them have been in those positions for a while. Some of them are newer, but they're all very, very knowledgeable about specific projects and work happening in any given district. Next slide, please. Caltrans also has several key policies. I'm going to talk about our Director's Policy 22 first on context-sensitive solutions. That's been in place for a long time. Our most recent policies are in the high 30s. So Policy 22 really talks about being able to respond to site context when you're designing a project. That might be your community, your environmental and transportation needs, unique safety or performance needs, but providing enough flexibility to to have your project mature to where the solution is really appropriate for the community it's being placed in. So while that's an older policy on our books, it has a very direct application for bicycle pedestrian infrastructure. More recently, we have our Director's Policy 36 on road safety. That has set a goal of 0 fatal and serious injuries by 2050, which is something that we're working towards as an agency. Really focused on a safety mindset, and also really focusing in related to the work you all are doing in eliminating race, age, ability, and mode-based disparities in fatal and serious injuries. Obviously, we have some disequity applied across those when it comes to bike and ped serious and fatal injuries. Then we have Director's Policy 37 on complete streets, which is really saying that all transportation projects funded or overseen by Caltrans will provide comfortable, convenient, and connected complete streets facilities unless an exception is documented or approved. And so a minute ago, I talked about us, starting this coming winter, posting that documentation around why we're not able to provide bicycle pedestrian infrastructure on any given shop project. So that's coming publicly, but this policy really set the stage for us to both, do this broader sweep of attempting to do complete streets work everywhere, and also being more transparent around when we cannot. Next slide. So we have quite a few key plans. We have our strategic plan, and that's every 4 years, Caltrans updates our strategic plan, really talking about our mission, vision, goals, and alignment. Mode shift is a huge goal for our agency for a lot of different reasons. There's, climate related reasons, there's equity and transportation related reasons, there's congestion relief related reasons. There's so many reasons why complete streets, bicycle, pedestrian elevate themselves to our strategic plan. Then we have our California Transportation Plan 2050, which is really the longer view of what we're trying to accomplish over the next now 25 years. We have the Complete Streets Action Plan, which is publicly available now on our website and is highlighting some of the higher impact actions that our agency is taking to improve our bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. And it includes both actions being taken at our headquarters level by people like myself, as well as in this particular round is elevating some of the specific project work happening across the state and the districts. Soon, this action plan will also incorporate actions for SB 960, the most recent Complete Streets legislation that we'll talk about in a few minutes in the legislative section. But, so this is really kind of our public reporting and quarterly update on what we see some of our highest implementation items to be. Then we also have the Caltrans State Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan, and also specific district active transportation plans, which are somewhat fondly called CAP plans, that are really rolling up district-specific needs and goals, and the metrics around why we're building where we're building related to bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. And then most recently, we have road safety action plans, which are rolling up kind of, high injury network on actions related to, vehicular, but also bicycle and pedestrian safety in the districts. And so really between the CAP plans and the road safety action plans, looking across those, you get a pretty good idea of where Caltrans is on, areas we're elevating with need. Both of those plans had engagement, external engagement, although it's been a little while on the active transportation plans because those are now a few years old. Next slide. There are quite a few manuals and guidance that impact both the state highways and local roads. I'm going to talk a little bit about the state highways first. And so, this is a list of documents that Caltrans either must use or may use, depending on your project. The California Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, also known as the MUTCD, has a lot of bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure elements in it. It handles all of the striping on all of the traffic control devices, like any kind of channelizer or curb offset. So this has a lot of information in it around things that you would interact with as a bicyclist or pedestrian. It kind of governs, I would say, a third of the rules related to bicycle pedestrian infrastructure. On some transit in the California MUTCD, although not quite as much as bike and ped. And then the second big one is the Highway Design Manual, which has all of the geometrics. So the Highway Design Manual has things like how wide your bike lane must be, where you can put a crosswalk. The California MUTCD covers what the paint will look like in your crosswalk, how wide the stripe will be, whether or not you'll have lighter striping. So these two things really work in partnership together. Both of them are a very dense read. The Highway Design Manual also provides bikeway guidance. And one of the key things about the bikeway guidance is that while Caltrans uses that bikeway guidance, local cities and counties that are not related to the state highway system in California also must use that bikeway guidance unless they've formally adopted their own. And so much of California is also using the HDM for bikeway design guidance. Additionally, more recently, we have developed a design information bulletin, and that's kind of like it's almost like an addendum to the Highway Design Manual. DIB 94 is on complete streets, and it's added a tremendous amount of information on basically additional bike and pedestrian opportunities that you have when your speed limit is posted 45 miles an hour or less. And so that is a may use. You can opt in to use that. You don't have to, but if you do choose to use it, it has more development in the bicycle and pedestrian arena for areas, again, what Caltrans would call lower speed, 45 miles an hour or less, recognizing that may still feel very high speed to many people in this conversation. Additional guidance that you can use that is available, we have a traffic calming guide, which I think I have a picture of in our next slide. We have a Main Street guide. So the traffic calming guide has, I believe, 27 different kind of widgets or elements that you can bring into your project that geometrically slow traffic down. Roundabout is one of those, on speed bumps, humps, tables, things that kind of force cars to drive slower that aren't a speed limit sign or, enforcement. On the Main Street guide really, really goes into a much more kind of, I think, citizen-friendly discussion around, what makes a successful Main Street, and how you can bring those into a community. It's more accessible for people that aren't professionally engaged in engineering and, these topics. And it really has a lot of pictures, a lot of images, and is a great place to start if you're trying to discuss with the community kind of what the options are. There's also the Smart Mobility Framework for implementation, which is more of a planning level document that talks about land use and planning. The Complete Intersections Guide is a guide that Caltrans put out in 2013. We're currently in the middle of an update on that. We don't yet have a launch date for our update, but that's really around, really focused on bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure coming through intersections. Then additionally, federally, there's the AASHTO Bikeway Guide, and which is something that Caltrans does refer to, and the NACTO Bikeway Guide, which is really more focused on cities, less on state right-of-way. But there's, kind of tremendous bikeway guidance at the federal level. Next slide. So for local roads, one of the big changes here is that if you're not crossing the state highway system, you don't have to use the Highway Design Manual. You can use your own local design guidance. Many agencies do. predominantly, I think, because one, it's a robust set of guidance, and two, it does elevate your legal liability protections. You know, if you're following this sort of state approved design guidance, I think it adds a level of legal security. So we do have a lot of cities and counties that do use the HDM, but it's not mandatory. But you still have to use the manual on uniform traffic control devices. And if you haven't formally adopted your own bikeway guidance, you still have to use our HDM bikeway guidance. So that kind of sets your, your guiding document stage. Obviously, between our manuals and guidance and our plans, there's a tremendous amount of bedtime reading to be done by people who are interested. Next slide, please. So outside of all of that, there is also some key state legislation. Before my time in headquarters, there was the California Complete Streets Act in 2008, which really mandated that local governments update their general plans to support safe and equitable transportation options for all users, regardless of age and ability. And the goal of that legislation was to promote a balanced multimodal network that encouraged walking, biking, and public transit alongside automobile use. And then in 2013, the CEQA reform for VMT, or vehicle miles traveled, came into play, 743, which reshaped how CEQA analyzed replaced level of service for vehicles with vehicle miles traveled. So it shifted that focus from kind of traffic throughput to a reduction in the amount of driving people were doing. And so that was a huge shift for bicycle and pedestrian. And the goal was to support infill development, active and transit-oriented mobility, and greenhouse gas reduction while streamlining sustainable project approvals. And so that bill still has really significant impacts at Caltrans, although I think that we're in this kind of permanent cycle of working to improve our agency response to that as well. And then next was AB 43 on traffic safety in 2021, which empowered local governments to lower speed limits in areas with high pedestrian and bicycle activity, such as business districts, zones near schools, or senior facilities. And obviously the goal of that was to create safer and more accessible streets. It supports our complete streets goals with speed reduction as a strategy, but it's not something that our agency is able to enact. It's really focused on local governments being able to enact, change the speed limits in their jurisdiction. Then most recently, and these are, within my personal time in complete streets, we have SB 695, the Highway Transparency Act. And so what that is mandated is that Caltrans really transparently report, starting with 2018 forward, on new bikeways, new sidewalks, new connections to local bike and ped networks, along with a whole lot of other things, new transit lanes, new single purpose lanes, any housing that we've removed for transportation facilities. There's a kind of a giant list of things that we're publicly reporting on. And so the first 695 report, which was 2018 through 2023, was published quite recently. It's pretty interesting. And this coming January, they'll, henceforth come out annually. So this next report in January will report on 2024. And that is rolling up all of the work we've done at construction completion. And so it's literally a direct report out on what we just built, which is quite different from some of our other reporting efforts, which are talking about what we're planning or, talking about other milestones, but not necessarily what we now have in the ground. The next piece of legislation is SB 960, which was also 2024, the Complete Streets Bill. That is mandating, it's kind of taking all of our current complete streets policies and elevating them to be mandated into law. So it's kind of memorializing them beyond our own guidance. And in addition, it has added some transit role for Caltrans, including setting on basically developing transit plans and setting targets in our our own funding programs for transit infrastructure or transit priority infrastructure. So the goal there is really elevating kind of transit functionality on the state highway system. And then the last one that is recent is the Class 3 Bikeways Bill 2016, which has mandated that we will no longer use share rows in, basically shared use bikeways where the bike is either sharing the travel lane, sharing the sidewalk. At speed limits of 30 miles an hour above. There's been a lot of confusion around this bill. This doesn't mean that you can't have a class 3 bikeway at those speeds or a new class 3 bikeway, but it does mandate that you'll no longer be demarcating those with share roads in the roadway. So that's really the focus of the last piece of legislation here. Next slide. All right, so those were state legislation. There's also been some key federal legislation. Obviously, many of you are familiar with the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990. Caltrans implementation of ADA laws is related to our Complete Streets work, but but internal to Caltrans, it's handled somewhat separately. So we have a separate infrastructure program for ADA versus bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. And our ADA program is really focused on adequate curb ramps, level changes, and sidewalk connections to those level changes. Whereas our bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure program is basically all of the remaining sidewalk, all of your bicycle facilities, all of your crossings. Then there's the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Bill Infrastructure Investments and Job Act in 2021 that invested a significant amount of funding into our both local government and Caltrans bicycle and pedestrian program. And so let's see. So it added a $45 million grant program to for active transportation, and then in our internal to Caltrans, it added another 50 million bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. That ends on September 30th, 2026, and so everybody's those projects will be kind of wrapping up soon. That was basically like a one-time funding investment for Complete Streets. And then additionally, there was the Complete Streets Act of 2021. This was another piece of federal registration. And we were already in compliance with that act when it passed, but it basically asked each state to establish a Complete Streets program, including a competitive program to fund and design and construction and prioritize Complete Streets projects. And so now that's federal. Every state is working their way towards that, or I guess by now probably has it, since that was 2021. Next slide. So there are quite a few funding sources for Complete Streets projects for the state. So for California, there's the Active Transportation Program that's put out by the CTC. That is a competitive program. We have funding programs that can be used for active transportation on our system, but that can be used, the CTC program can be used, any roadway in the state. There is the Solutions for Congested Corridors program, which is a state fund. Yeah.
I'm like totally into what you're saying, but I have one member that has left and come back, and she has to leave again. And she had a question, and I wanted to make sure that we gave her an opportunity to get that addressed. So Member Peggy, you want to go ahead and ask her your question so that you can do what you have to do? Member Peggy?
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Chair Kelly, Armis Kelly, for this opportunity. And I apologize for interrupting this presentation. It's fascinating, all of the various elements that have gone into and are continuing to go into Complete Streets. So, yes, my name is Peggy Martinez. I'm the person who requested this presentation. So thanks very much. I'm on this committee as someone interested in pedestrian safety. I am a member of the blindness community. I'm also an accessibility consultant. And as I listen to all the variables here, I am kind of stunned. It's just huge. But let me just ask you this, since I have probably too many questions for today. would either potentially you be available to answer them, or I don't know who would, or maybe I can make a list. I think the thing that pops up in my mind the most clearly is the idea that the ADA program is primarily working on level changes and ramps, which we all agree on are important, but the connectivity to accessible pedestrian signals, to navigating across intersections, to striping brightness, to the way poles are positioned in order that directional arrows are pointing the pedestrian in the right direction. I mean, all kinds of questions I've got. So, first, thanks for the information that you're providing, and then secondly, what would be a good way for me to dig into this a little bit more with somebody?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Peggy. I will say that related to your ADA nuanced questions, those will not be covered in the rest of this presentation. So if you leave early, you won't miss those answers. But I would say,
I would think, yeah.
Yeah, if you'd like to pull together a list of questions, they can get that back to me, and then I'd be happy to kind of coordinate response. My guess is that your questions are going to hit a couple of the different divisions that we talked about in the beginning of this presentation, and so I don't think they're all going to reside under a single ownership. But if you want to submit a list, I'd be happy to either respond to that to you, or we can circle back to this committee with a kind of a follow-up presentation, depending on, I guess, how many questions remain outstanding with others at the end of this. Either way.
Okay, great. Because I have some I think, very grave concerns about how things are being done and what's being left out. So they're questions, but they're concerns. They're safety concerns. So okay, I'll think about that and write something. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that would be great.
So, Sequoia would like to just add on one thing before we can let you continue with and then we'll wrap up with the following questions.
I just want to acknowledge that Member Martinez, there's a lot of nods from the dais with you. So staff, interagency staff will work to coordinate those questions and work with you, Susan, to make sure that gets to you and that the right communication is happening.
Okay, great.
You can go ahead and continue finishing your presentation, because the room is like biting at the bit to make comments.
All right, I'll try to wrap this up. So, there's a lot of different funding sources. Some of them are available statewide. Some of them are available inside Caltrans. There's the Solutions for Congested Corridor program that is led by the CTC. Cycle 5 is expected to begin in 2026. There'll be updates to those program guidelines. They do have basically, you have to have comprehensive corridor plans that may include rail, transit, bicycle pedestrian facilities. So those are, that's a kind of a major funding source. There's STIP, which is a state-funded program also led by CTC, and active transportation projects or facilities on and off system can be funded that way. Caltrans and regional planning agencies prepare on those improvements, and it's December 15th on odd years. So each of these funding programs has unique and slightly different rules from all the others, slightly different timing from all the others. Inside Caltrans, we have SHOP, which is our major funding source, and that was what David was trying to remember the acronym for earlier. So that is where we fund our own targets for bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. That's what SB 960 mandated we have, future transit priority infrastructure targets for. We get a chance to kind of update our metrics there every 2 years. The ITIP is the Interregional Transportation Improvement Program. Caltrans manages ITIP, and we'll submit final 2026 ITIP to the CTC this coming December. Then we have highway maintenance funds, and that tends to do more minor repair work like potholes, crack sealing, paint replacement. maybe bulb outs, median islands, but our more minor work, right? And then the major work we handle through SHOP. So there's quite a variety of funding on. None of it is totally straightforward. Next slide, please. So nearing the end, everyone. So Complete Streets development phases. These are projects happening inside Caltrans or in partnership with local government. We have this flow chart from our planning through construction. Next slide. I'm going to give you guys just a little bit about what's happening at each of these phases. So in the planning phase, a lot of times for bicycle pedestrian infrastructure, the discussion is typically around what needs do we have, what can we coordinate and group into a project, where are our highest priority needs, and funding those. Then you get into our project initiation or our PID. Then it's really about what are community transportation priorities, what are the specific features that are going to be in a project, kind of trying to fine tune the specifics of that actual project. Next slide. Then you get into our project delivery phases, the next of which is our project approval and environmental document phase. So that's where you're really weighing your alternatives, the pros and cons of your different alternatives. Do you have a separated bikeway? Do you have wider sidewalks? What are your crossing facilities going to be? And you're kind of looking at your options. You're doing your environmental document to see where your impacts or mitigation measures may be. And then once you've made it through that phase, you're really in developing your final plans, specifications, and your project estimates. That's really where the feedback is more on material selection, on much more refined, right? More in your aesthetics and less in your, we really wanted a tunnel, not a bridge. Then our final, next slide. Our final phase is construction, and typically during construction, it's more about helping with helping public access and detours. But most of the project decisions have hopefully been made. Hopefully, you don't have significant changes to your project in construction. And so that's pretty typical project development at Caltrans. One of the things we learned with our SB 695 report, what you're doing at construction report, was that our average project development time frame start to finish here is about 9 years. So obviously that's a pretty long project development process. Next slide. So we have a handful of committees in place. Obviously we have the Equity Advisory Committee that you all were here talking with you today. There is a committee that looks at the California traffic control devices. So anything new, anything changes to that MUTCD I told you about goes through them first. Then we have a California Walk and Bike Technical Advisory Committee. That's a statewide committee. A few of you are also members on that. That's really looking at kind of statewide policy guidance changes that Caltrans may, is either considering or doing for bicycle and pedestrian. Some of our districts also have district bicycle and pedestrian advisory committees, which are more focused at the project level, working with districts. Then we have a design guidance advisory committee that's looking at our highway design manual, making specific recommendations to that. And so these various external committees all are, have regular meetings and are doing either active contribution towards changes in our guidance or active review or discussion. I have 2 more slides. The next slide, please. So our engagement opportunities and discussions for this group, we have Complete Streets policies and plans that are either being under development or being updated regularly. And so, one of the things we can do is we can come back when we're working on active documents to seek out engagement with you all on active workload we have. Another role for you to play is to help us strengthen the equity within our Complete Streets implementation. Current efforts related to that, we have engagement guidance and development. We have equitable funding discussions on project cycles as all these different funding sources, mature. There are near-term opportunities. We have a state bicycle and pedestrian plan update coming this next, calendar year. We have district and statewide transit plans in development. There'll be an opportunity to engage with our district transit plans specifically around equity goals and some of the questions that have come up on specific criteria we should or shouldn't be using for an equity metric related to our district transit plans. So that would be later this fall. And then we have a question for you all. We're not exactly sure what you want to provide input on or how. And so, should complete streets items be discussed with all of you? Is there a subcommittee that would like to engage in that? In our California Walk by Technical Advisory Committee, there's a subcommittee that really gets into the very, very specific weeds of our design guidance and policy. And then there's, the full group that weighs in on subjects at a slightly less granular level. So that's something I'd like to hear back and people are responding on. And then my last slide is that we just included a list of available resources. These are all links for people that want to come in and do a deeper dive into any of the things we just talked about, because obviously it's really hard to wrap your mind around it in a 20-minute presentation. So that everybody, this presentation has been made available, will be made available, and then people just know that you can dive into any of those plans that got discussed. Last slide is my contact information. And that's it. And I'm happy to take questions or comments.
Well, Susan, I just want to say thank you for a very comprehensive report. I mean, I often find myself in the BPAC meetings asking some of these questions, and now I know why it takes so long for those answers sometimes to come back, because you have to really go through the weeds as you speak. I'm going to go ahead and move this over to our member Michelle Rousey, because she did have a question. And
I wish I had more than one, but I know I can't have them all answered today. But
yeah,
thank you.
and again, I think that this is because of the intensity and the dive that I think many of you want to take on this. It's going to require another item for us to go ahead and put on the calendar. But if you can give just a preview of where you're at and just what you're leaning towards, that way she has an idea to kind of start feeling. And as she asked, she wanted to know, is this the space? Which I definitely see that it is a space because there is interest. So go ahead, please, and thank you.
When you said that, and I might be misquoting you, but your disability stuff is separate, and I'm wondering if that's true. Why isn't it like through the complete design of complete streets that accessibility aspect is part of it? If I'm wrong, then please tell me.
Yeah, so one of the things around just how we're managing our assets is that our ADA infrastructure program is separate from our bicycle and pedestrian program. And so they are managing, I would say, one piece of the infrastructure related to curb ramps, level changes. And then our bicycle pedestrian infrastructure program is managing more the connectivity piece. Peggy started to break down a lot of different elements. Some of the elements that she brought in are managed by our traffic safety department, so I think we have pieces of the system kind of managed in a couple different places.
I'm not surprised, but I'm also worried about them being so siloed and them not working together in a way that makes a good productive way for all of it. My other comment is whomever I need to get a hold of about your ADA and your curb cuts and your current design that's being used around this state and in our local communities, please put me in contact with that person, because I'm finding more and more curb cuts that there's a lip where you fall off the side of it, where my power wheelchair can tip and has tipped over, or there's access issues that aren't visible, and I've also tipped my chair. And I'm just concerned that some of these new designs are new. I've not seen them in the past. They're new, and a lot of our new sidewalks and streets are coming up with these designs more and more. And I'm just worried that, like me, other people are going to have issues. Thank you.
That was a lot. That was good. Very, very good. Thank you. Now we have member Howard Wong.
That was a really great presentation. And It's very informative. It reminds us how far I think California and the United States has come. It wasn't too long ago that I remember very, great disappointment in many of our streets, roads, highways, and public realm. So that when one looked at European streets or even some of the older cities and towns in the United States, the lack of concern about beauty and you know the experience of how we move through our public realm was lacking. So it's really wonderful to see this kind of major steps forward. The only issue, of course, is that it's so many things happening that there doesn't seem to be a much more coordinated way of having design professionals and planning professionals somehow uh, coordinate, integrate this beautification of the state in America in a more integrated way. So when one sees in some countries where all the roads and streets seem to have a great deal of care about using its limited dollars in a much more impactful way, that hopefully someday we'll have a much more of a you know type of oversight where all these committees, advisory groups, agencies, leadership throughout the state somehow much more formally coordinated through, I don't know, a state architect or planners, planning and design professionals who have a much more, you know, much more presence in the design of our public realm. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Wong, and I really appreciate your perspective on what you've seen, and especially I know that in the larger cities, you've seen a lot of transitions from how mobility justice has shifted, right? And I thank you for that. Add additional support. We have Member David Acevedo. Thank you. And if you
Thank
lower
you so
your
much.
hand.
And thank you so much for joining and giving such a wonderful presentation. Good to see you a couple times in the last week here. I just want to give a shout out to you and your team for really giving us a really comprehensive picture of everything that you're doing, and it is quite a lot. It makes me think of how, especially in light of Member Rousey's comments, how important seeing is to really kind of understand the weight of what complete streets are, what its opportunities are, how we can make sure that we're meeting the needs of everybody on the street. And so one recommendation that I kind of just had off the top of my head in hearing this is that whenever we get together in person, somehow finding time to find some place that's next to where we're meeting potentially to see what a complete street thing could look like, or an area that could use a complete street, or that has maybe perhaps a project that Caltrans can identify as a complete street project that's in the works or that's being planned for, so that we can really see that in action. And if we're meeting virtually, would love to have maybe some pictures or some sort of very quick narrative, maybe like a 5-minute narrative presented by Caltrans or CTC or CalSTA staff of showing a complete streets in action. Because I think that the more that we get used to it, the more we can see it. And I also just want to really highlight Member Peggy and also Member Rousey and Member Howard and a lot of it's very clear that these discussions that we're having from the presentations that you're giving, we want to really dig in and we want to really dig deep. And I know that we have subcommittees where we can kind of do that. But I just look at the time and I know I have to leave in 9 minutes. And this presentation was supposed to start actually at 2:50. And it's just wild to think, oh, how did we just get over time like this? So maybe I would ask Caltrans and CTC and CalSTA staff to and EAC staff to kind of audit this meeting and kind of see what happened with that, because I feel like we're not able to have the kind of comprehensive conversation that we wanted to have. Because I remember Peggy had a lot of great questions that I wanted to hear from, and Member Rousey. So I just kind of put that out there. But again, thank you so much for joining, and hope that we can hear this many other times over the course of these meetings. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. And yes, we definitely are seeing the impacts of how this is affecting others. But also, I just want to remind you, we did have to have an interpreter working simultaneously. And that was something that we did not account for. And I'm sorry that you cannot stay on longer. But we appreciate you being present and your contributions that you gave forth today. So thank you again. And now we'll be moving on to Member Polanyi Vasquez, followed by Member Lisa Alvarado. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Susan, for such a great presentation. I'm a big fan of Complete Streets and the safe systems approach and getting them all together and working together as a cohesive system. And, you know, as I've said before, and as I will continue to say, anytime we look at our streets and make them complete streets and make them, you know, safer and use that safe systems approach, it's something that is good for an 8-year-old and something that's good for an 80-year-old. It's the entire community. Susan, I don't know if there's any way that you'd be able to provide some type of advice. And I think that, you know, maybe even the questions that we have, we can kind of put the questions out there and have you come back for a follow-up presentation, because I think everybody's really interested in this piece, because this is an equity piece. People being able to traverse safely on the streets, regardless of their capabilities, is an equity concern. And so this is definitely some place where the work that we do intersects directly with the work that you do. When I work with different municipalities, especially with adopting complete streets and the safe systems approach, I notice that there's a lot of hesitation with that AB 43 and lowering the speed limits on certain roads. Is there any way that you can speak to what hesitations there may be with lowering speed limits? I do understand that previously engineering, you know, really prioritized moving, you know, cars as quickly as possible from point A to point B. But as we focus on more of that safe systems approach, I have a hard time understanding why there'd be so much pushback in lowering speed limits.
I can take a high level crack at that question now, and then I can also, you know, come back with that under whatever format we do future response on questions coming out of this meeting. A high level, I think there's a couple factors at play. I think that there's still a very large culture around speed in vehicles in California and maybe the United States. So I think that there's concern around political pushback that, you know, be unpopular with community members of the driving variety. And additionally, I think there are a lot of concerns that reducing speed will manifest in congestion and, you know, kind of traffic congestion, traffic jams, delay. So while, you know, 743 helped us step away from kind of vehicle delay and congestion metrics, I don't think that we've like culturally stepped fully away from that yet. So I think that a lot of that hesitation, I think, is political. I think there's still a lot of pushback. It depends a little bit on where you are in the state, but I do think that elevating the safety metrics, the safe system approach, I think there's ways to combat that with, you know, specific data and specific engagement work. So I guess that's my high level take at that one, but I'll come back with more information.
Yeah, and I love that, Susan, and I think that that's exactly where my head is lining up to with that thought, and I think that that's kind of where this group really should think about having maybe, you know, a Complete Streets working group or subgroup where we can kind of talk about how we can better educate engineers, how we can better educate policymakers, how we can better educate people on what is a complete street. How do we more better adopt that safe systems approach? Because we are human and we do make mistakes, and nobody should ever pay for a mistake with a life. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, and with consideration of everybody,
Thank you so much, Member Pulani. Agree with you that yes, we should all be talking about this. I want to say no to creating another subcommittee because I want to echo what my neighbor said. When we're together in the same room, we solve all the same solutions in the same room, and then we take it. You're dealing with a lot of productive people in this one space. So if you speak to us in the collective body, I have full faith that we'll disseminate. I also think that a language that keeps coming up is triage. So if there's a way that you can look at those localized folks that are skilled in the complete streets, I can see them initiating what that triage could look like. And echoing what Pulani said about we are an equity-based group. So I think that we could be leveraged in like strongholding. Are we meeting the triage in that equitable lens? And then I will withdraw anything else.
No, and I feel bad. No, but today was really interesting. And Susan, your presentation, like I said, comprehensive. I have so many things that I want to talk to you about, and I think that we all can agree that we want you to come back. It just seems like things like you talk about the weeds, but the weeds are so important because you can't move through the weeds, right? If we don't pull them and kind of look at them. And my thing was on rumble strips and how we've been putting them in and creating more danger, and not really looking at the spaces in between those rumble strips, 5 to 7 feet, in some places we're going to have to go back and redo some of those rumble strips along, especially in District 10. So we'll come back to that. I want to thank you for your time. And again, we're going to bring you back. We have a few more tabs to touch, and I don't want to take away from that opportunity as well, because we're already going into tab 11. But thank you again, Lindsay. We'll bring you back and we'll give you a complete report on what we'd like to see. And this is where we're going to give you your homework. Write up something afterwards and make sure that it gets sent so that we have those questions written down and we can go from there. Is there any public comment?
There's no public comment. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Vice Chair Gonzalez. I have a recommendation, and I don't know if this is doable for this committee, but I keep hearing, the interest for folks to collaborate and provide input for Complete Streets. So I'm like leaning towards pushing for like a special meeting just on Complete Streets, but I don't know with staff capacity if that can be a potential, and if the EAC members are open to that, because I think this is a very important subject where a lot of us have expertise and can provide that support to staff in this implementation process. And I think in a special meeting can be done.
I'm all for that. Do we have to motion on that or no? Okay, cool. Then we don't have to worry about that. It's been heard. I'm just saying thank you, because that is the truth. I know that subcommittees are important and they do provide a lot of breadth to what we're doing, but sometimes you don't have to reach across the room when the answers are right here. So I'm really glad that you guys are being vocal. Thank you. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could just, it's Allison over here.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry. I know there's a lot of still people, and we're still trying to, we are, I think what I am hearing from the conversation, the discussion, which is super robust and very, very good. I'm excited about this, and I know that there were some conversations around having, say, Member Martinez submitting questions. If there is follow-up and specific things that you guys have heard, you all have heard that you want to go into more, that will again help staff better shape what the next conversations look like. Because some of them, Member Rousey and Member Martinez both have very specific items. There are larger issues around state policy and state standards, things like that. Some of that could be, we can do them differently. We don't have to necessarily have to do it in the same kind of format. It may depend on accessibility and availability of and bandwidth of you all and of staff. So just trying to make sure we manage that really well and be thoughtful about it. But I love this conversation.
And I tend to agree, but I also know that even in this space, there are members here that may not have thought that that was within their purview per se, but when they're hearing it, it captures their interest enough to know that they have folks that are in that space that would require some answers. And because it hasn't been something that's been presented in a way that they've been able to ask, that perhaps it would, even though it may not be germane to me exactly what they're asking for, I'd still want to be able to be in that space to hear those responses. So that's why I kind of am inclined to lean towards having a special meeting where we'd be able to just kind of like have a brainstorming discussion and get some good feedback so that we could come back and even create maybe a report on what we learned. Because I think it's important to not be so confined, I guess, to the traditional approaches, but they have criteria and a different perspective on what they would like to see. And I don't want to like put out their light.
Yeah,
Dim-
Chair, I totally agree. I don't want to constrain the conversation.
That's exactly, yeah.
I think though, if there's ways we can identify the categories that we're focused on.
And that would be fair.
To be able to have more of an
orderly fashion.
outline of
Yeah.
the conversation, then everyone can participate. I mean, that's not.
That's
yeah,
great.
That's absolutely.
That sounds
but
great.
Yeah,
That sounds really
they
good.
outline and to make sure that staff are prepared.
Yeah,
And that we can provide
for
you
sure.
with the information potentially beforehand.
Yeah, and I'm in agreement. I mean, I think that that's a good way of looking at it. So we don't have to go through all the weeds, but just be able to look at what we're really honing in on. Okay, so I'm gonna take 1 minute to go ahead and bring in tab 11, which is the California Freight Mobility Plan update and discussion, and I'm gonna exercise that ability to just go right into it because we want to make sure that we hear that. But at the end of this meeting, when Carolyn comes back and just kind of gives us an overview, I'm going to make sure we captured everything that you said. So listen intently, and if there's something that's missing, please raise your hand and allow for that so that all staff will be aware of what is being said, and not just from my perspective, but from yours directly. Okay. So tab 11 is an update and discussion on California Freight Mobility Plan with Kaylin Pacheco. And again, I'll just ask that you hold your questions until the end of the presentation. We did make the exception for member Peggy because she was leaving. So I just want to clarify that if there was any doubt that I bypassed anyone. Tab 11 with Kaylin Pacheco. Thank you.
Good afternoon, evening, everyone. I have a slide deck, so I'll wait for that to come up. But I'll try to get through this as quickly as I can. My name is Kaylin Pacheco. I am the Office Chief for Strategic Freight Planning within Caltrans Headquarters Division of Transportation Planning. And I'm here today to talk about our freight mobility plan, also known as the CFMP. So next slide, please. So I'll give you a quick background on our CFMP efforts under Assembly Bill 14 and the provisions of the 2021 Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that was passed. It requires all states to create a freight plan every 4 years, which includes 17 elements that must be addressed in the plan. And this is necessary to be eligible for National Highway Freight Program funds. The previous CFMP was adopted in September of 2023. And so now we're working to develop CFMP 2027. Next slide. And today I'll focus on the current status of plan development and next steps that we're working towards. I'll share some of the bigger proposed changes to the plan, and I'll also talk about our outreach and engagement efforts. I'll give a brief overview on how we've been administering our surveys and share some information on responses so far. And I'll go over the timeline of the project and share some ways that you can help support this effort. Next slide. So for our proposed changes for our plan, we are revising our vision statement to be future focused so that we make sure we're always planning ahead and anticipating future goals and needs. We want to use clear and concise language, which everyone can understand and act on. We want to provide inspiration to all who read it and participate. We also want it to be purpose-driven on, the why. Why are we doing this? To act with intention and define a clear sense of why the plan is necessary and worth implementing. And of course, we want to make sure that it aligns with our overall state goals and plans. Currently, there are 7 goals. Some overlap and are redundant, so we're revising those goals to be a total of 5 goals instead of 7. And we'll be combining multimodal mobility and connectivity, economic prosperity, public health and environmental stewardship, safety and resiliency, and asset management. We're also revising our goal descriptions to include how the actual goal will be achieved and have a more focused and clear understanding of the goal. In the objectives section, we will be updating that to make sure that it fits under each of the 5 goals and are specific, measurable, and actionable. And finally, for our strategies and actions, we are refining our list of strategies and looking at what's been carried over the past iterations of our plans to come up with a new list that can guide how our work is moving forward, and potentially new strategies that could be added into the plan. And this will be proposed by our California Freight Advisory Committee and partners. I won't go into too much detail here, but we've started the development of the content for our modal sections within the plan. We have our highways chapter, we have railways, our ports, which include airports, seaports, land ports of entry, and pipelines. Each modal section will cover its respective freight system and facilities, technology, infrastructure, conditions and performance, freight flows and demands, safety and environmental impacts, technology, data, and any workforce related needs. We will also incorporate feedback from our outreach efforts into the needs assessment section. The benefit to having sections for each freight mode will provide an easier, more comprehensive structure of the plan and help readers navigate through the plan by mode rather than by topic. Next slide. So for our outreach engagement, we're a bit limited with resources, but we're doing the best that we can to hear and reach everyone. We still have some time, so we're looking into all opportunities to enhance our outreach efforts. We have used a Maptionaire survey instrument that kicked off in June and ended on July 15th. And we had a consultant on board to help us with this map-based web tool to conduct outreach. But we transitioned to the Caltrans engagement portal in July, and that is still active. And we anticipate that survey instrument will be open through the end of October, potentially into November or December. Some of the other outreach that we've done, our social media outreach, our first campaign kicked off in June and went for a month. And our second campaign was started in August and will continue through the month of October. And that's utilizing Caltrans Facebook, X, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We've had the opportunity to also present at numerous meetings and committees. We presented to our California Freight Advisory Committee in February, and then again in July of this year, we have presented to our Freight Interagency meeting, Imperial County Transportation Commission, Technical Advisory Committee, Rural Counties Task Force, Imperial Mexicali Binational Alliance, the IIJA reauthorization for economic prosperity and goods movement sub-working group. We've also presented at the Native American Advisory Committee and Placer County Transportation Planning Agency Technical Advisory Committee. We do have some other events coming up where we'll be presenting. One is at the El Dorado Transportation Commission Technical Advisory Committee, SACOG's Transportation Committee, California Energy Commission Roundtable, and we anticipate having another California Freight Advisory Committee in late January or early February. Next slide. So we have received quite a few public survey responses. These results are coming from the Maptionaire survey, which closed in July. The total visitors to the survey are in the navy blue. There were 1,638 visitors. The submitted responses are those individuals who had clicked done at the end of the questionnaire, and unsubmitted responses may have answered some questions or none, but have not clicked done. And then the bottom bar is bounce visitors, meaning they viewed the questionnaire without answering any of the questions. So if, as you can see on this heat map, respondents in Southern California, especially around Inland Empire, were strongly represented. The map also shows heat spots around the Bay Area, Sacramento, and Eureka, and additional representation throughout the more rural areas of the state. Next slide. For industry survey, the freight industry survey responses, the results also come from Maptionaire, and our industry responses are considerably lower at the moment, with only about 30 responses from industry folks so far. The bar graph on the right includes a breakdown of industries who've provided responses, and a majority are coming from the trucking industry. So this helps us see where we need to focus our efforts in the near future. And we hope to conduct interviews with some of these industry stakeholders. Next slide. So one of the questions that's on the survey is, are you aware that California has a state freight plan? Well, this survey reached a significant number of respondents who were not aware of our state freight plan, which at the very least helped raise awareness of the effort. There was also a smaller cohort of respondents who had heard of the plan, but weren't clued into what the purpose was. And over half of those respondents went through the entire survey and submitted their responses. Only a small portion of respondents to the public survey had heard of the plan and had previously provided feedback indicating the survey had reached a wide range of new groups and audiences. Of 175 submitted responses, 370 of those indicated that they didn't know about the freight plan and didn't know what freight was before taking the survey. Next slide. And another question was, how important is freight to the state and local economy? And we got a variety of responses, but some of them that were highlighted were freight is essential, but impacts are growing, recognition of the essential role of freight and how foundational it was to the economy. Rural areas rely heavily on freight for essential goods and services. Traffic congestion and road impacts were common frustrations. And addressing community concerns and balanced solutions, where we want to prioritize infrastructure improvements before warehouse and construction, sustainable and community-friendly freight approaches, shift to rail alternative freight modes to relieve highway pressure, and air quality and health concerns, especially in the Inland Empire communities. Next slide. We also collected information on some of the positive and negative impacts of freight. I'll go through some of the negative comments first. Traffic congestion and commute disruptions, air quality and public health concerns, noise pollution, road damage, and infrastructure strain, decreased quality of life, equity and environmental justice concerns. But on the positive side, access to goods, convenience of the delivery of goods, economic benefits where jobs are created, lower consumer costs and faster shipping, and support for local businesses and infrastructure were highlighted. Next slide. So for our public service survey results on some of the demographic data that we've collected for the public survey, of the total number of respondents, 63.7 were female, 35.1% were male, 1.3 were other. For race, 80.9% are Caucasian, 7.8 for Asian, 4.6 other, 4.4 Black or African American, 3% Native American Indian, Alaskan Native, and 1.1% were Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander. And the income levels, 94.7% were over the federal poverty level and 5.3% under. Next slide. So some of the key takeaways, most respondents were not aware of the freight plan, but now understand the interactions with the freight system and how that impacts their communities. Traffic congestion and various forms of pollution were top concerns for inland Southern California respondents, turned out in large numbers, and they're motivated due to traffic congestion and other impacts of distribution centers. And they're less willing than other areas to accept a jobs economic development argument for freight-related development. On the industry survey, the low turnout leaves many perspectives underrepresented, so additional outreach is needed to better understand this part of the CFMP audience, and the majority of respondents indicated that they're connected to trucking. So we really want to focus on those other areas of the freight industry to balance out those low response rates. Next slide. So here's a timeline of our critical milestones. We're currently in plan development, and we will be until December 2026. We're doing the content development, collaborating with various offices, divisions, our partner agencies, with our California Freight Advisory Committee. So we're just trying to get the word out about our plan and collecting the information that we need to develop a robust plan. We're also conducting outreach and engagement efforts, and we're hoping to have a draft completed by December of 2026, and then it will go out for public review through June 2027. And then it will go to FHWA, our Federal Highway Administration, for review and approval in September of 2027. And then the release of our plan would be in December of 2027. Next slide. So you all have received an invitation to participate in the survey, and that was sent out on September 22nd. If you haven't had a chance to respond, we will resend the survey to the EAC following today's meeting as a reminder. If you can share the survey across your networks, that would help us expand our reach and hear from more communities and industry representatives. I can provide some text language for you to copy and paste directly into the body of an email or a newsletter if you'd be interested in sharing with your contacts, and we can get that over to you. Additionally, if you have any suggestions for outreach opportunities, including virtual or in-person meetings, please let me know, and I'd love to get those set up. We have this QR code. This QR code is active. It does take you to the Caltrans engagement portal, where both the public survey and the industry survey are readily available for you. And I think this concludes my presentation, but I think a question that I have for the EAC is, would this outreach effort be best suited for the Transportation Planning and Program Guidance Subcommittee over the next few months? I think is the question that I have. But with that, thank you so much for the opportunity to present this evening, and I will open it up to questions if there is time.
Thank you. First up, we have member Carrie Akimi Hernandez.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Kaylin, for your presentation. This is such an important topic, and everything that we've had on our agenda today requires thoughtful and meaningful engagement. So I do have a question and thoughts for opportunity to expand on in the future. But I saw a deadline for October 31st for outreach. I want to know what the expectation is for that and how that ties in to your planning for the deadline by December 2026. I have concerns about language justice, seeing that the predominant respondents were white, 80% overwhelmingly. And then I have just notes that I made with considerations. So want to know how AI ties into this, want to know how EPA, tariffs, TSA, our environment, there's so much movement in our waters right now that are harming our ecosystem, warming the waters, and economic trade is important, but our climate is also equally important. Transparency rather. So I would love to know how this ties into everything. I heard you mention trucking, which we know is there's a huge debate about that going to AI with driverless trucks and such. So obviously we can't cover any of that right now, but I would love to know how we can do this, as well as something I also made a note of was, how do we track oil, raw materials, and lithium being transported in all those areas? Those are of great concern to me. And so again, we don't have time now. Would love to have further conversation and invite you to our subcommittee as well. Thank you.
And I really appreciate all of those points because we're all on the same page. I'm looking at my notes. She's looking at her notes. I'm like, okay, this is something important. So, and I appreciate, you don't have to answer a question right now, Ms. Kaylin. I just want to make sure that each member is able to sound out their narrative. And again, both of these items are very deep and enriched with questions, and we want to make sure that we give it the justice that it should receive, and that you feel satisfied with those answers as well. But to bring those points to light, very important. So we'll move it right on to Anna, which is our vice chair.
Thank you, Chair. So I want to ditto everything our colleague Akimi Hernandez mentioned. I also had that in my notes, so thank you for bringing those up. I know in previous experiences that I've had doing surveys with our community, I know that white is always kind of like the umbrella for Latinos also. So I want to make sure that we're clarifying, are there any Latinos in this survey? And if we can sort of differentiate that from the white, category. But I agree that most of the time white folks are the ones that are more, involved in these types of needs assessment, surveys. With that, I also have a lot of questions. I think this is a good opportunity for us to have these conversations in the Transportation Planning Subcommittee for sure. But again, these are like very important topics that I would love for the entire EAC to contribute in and allow community to also come and provide input. But one of the most important things that I wanted to highlight right now, and again, you don't have to answer for sake of time, but under the freight modal sections, I noticed that we have ports, and then, then we sort of categorize airports, seaports, uh, land ports of entry. And I wanted to just clarify if the land ports of entry are those considering the inland ports, because I know the Inland Empire, the reason why you saw so much contributions from the community there is because we were pushing this. We're like the dump site for freight in the entire state of California. We're nearing almost 1 million truck trips a day in our communities, and we are getting a rise in asthma and pulmonary illnesses in our communities, more people carrying oxygen tanks, and so many other, things that are happening because there's a huge concentration of diesel exhaust coming into our communities. So I want to make sure that we're emphasizing inland ports because I know, I'm sure there's more, but the Inland Empire is one and the Oakland area is another one. And so I want to make sure that we're also highlighting and we're taking care of those communities. I also didn't see any mention of AB 98. And I know I keep bringing this up because this has a lot to do with the freight and circulation elements in all the municipalities, especially the warehouse concentration area, such as the Inland Empire and the Bay Area. And so I want to make sure that AB 98 is included in this plan and addressed and implemented because a lot of the municipalities that are moving forward to implement their circulation elements are being held up by Caltrans because there's no collaboration or maybe both entities don't know how to collaborate, and it has to do a lot with addressing the freight congestion and traffic. And then the other one is when we mention rail as a way to aid and take away trucks off the road for people like the ones in the Inland Empire, this just helps more containers get moved from the ports to across state lines or across the desert, but it doesn't remove trucks from the road. And so we've been able to identify that, and we're actually creating a report for that. So I want to make sure that we're careful when we're saying that rail is supposed to alleviate that congestion. It's really not. It's just adding more production of passage of containers rather than taking trucks off the road. So yeah, I mean, I have so much more, but for the sake of time, I want to allow other colleagues to make comments, but we can continue these conversations in the subcommittee.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Gonzalez. And now, I know she's on fire. Okay, Member Michelle Rousey, and I know she's got lots to add.
I the one thing that really popped into mind when I was hearing their presentation is the demographics that are replying to the survey, and not only that it's mostly white, but it's also mostly women. My concern is have you reached out to the unions, and the port dock supervisors and all that to see if they can get their people? I'm not saying it's all men, but at the same time, let's see if we can reach out to them at where they are at place of work or others to reach them where they are to try to get that demographic included. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Howard Wong?
Yep,
I'm sorry to
thanks for
interrupt.
the
This is the
presentation.
interpreter, Jessica Poitevin. We end at 5:30. Is this meeting going to continue, or what's the status of the time frame right now for ASL interpretation? Can you guys hear me?
We're working on technical CC captioning. Hold on.
Okay.
Yes, you can turn on closed captioning, but you do it individually. So for each person who requires that, you can turn on closed captioning.
So I just make the announcement, if anyone needs further interpretation, whether it's signed, that closed captioning is available and they can go ahead and make the adjustments accordingly so that they could be participating in the rest of the remainder of this discussion. And we'll allow a short minute pause. Howard?
Yes, I echo the concern about not having sufficient survey respondents in the low income and ethnic neighborhoods. Freight traffic on highways often coincides and runs through communities of color and communities of low income, traditionally marginalized communities. So even with or without the survey, there's a lot of existing data about the health impacts of highway air pollutants and emissions on low-income marginalized neighborhoods that often are adjacent to highways, freeways, and heavily traveled commercial routes. So that data should be part of the planning and the study. You know, the high rates of tuberculosis, leukemias, asthma, and all types of respiratory ailments. And this study is very timely. The freight industry itself is already looking at options. You know, we not only with AI coordination of routes and schedules, but there are studies of how to where to place distribution centers, the use of smaller vehicles, electric vehicles, even electric bikes, carts are being used in some countries. So I think this is very timely. I think it could be help transform how our streets are used. So there's a direct correlation with the complete streets planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Wong. Right now, we will go ahead and allow our interpreters to go offline. Thank you very much for your services. We thank you for being present and allowing us to be able to get this thus far with our work. So thank you and have a great rest of your week. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for clarifying. Sorry to interrupt. Take care, you guys.
Thank you. All right. Well, for me, I certainly, this has been an interesting day. I just think it's so important to recognize that these are such deep, deep, heavy issues. They're like an onion, many, many layers. Once you start opening that onion, they all start falling apart because you start seeing the connections, the need for, we mentioned AI, we mentioned different corridors. But for myself, I was on a freight discussion yesterday, and I was listening to someone from the Inland Empire, and she was like, you are barely even touching the tip of the iceberg on what you're seeing. If you think it's crazy now, imagine how we live. Imagine what we see. And so to really be in front of the moving vehicle, so to speak, to just stop it or even just be part of it, we have to be kind of strategically moving around so that we can head you off at the pass on how it's growing. And it's not just transportation, it's technology, it's community, local jurisdictions. They're all for certain things, but they're not really looking at the full picture. And it goes back to that discussion of wraparound services and everything. And the wraparound approach is great for mental health, but in design and structure and infrastructure and planning, we have to look at how everything is connected, how it creates outcomes, how we create sustainability. So these are discussions that I am so excited you guys are already like channeling what you're going to be looking at, and I'm grateful, Kaylin, that you're going to be able to be part of that. And like all the things that were said, I echo all of those responses. I live in Merced, California, and just 5 miles outside of Merced, they've already decided that Atwater is going to be the next inland dry port, Yeah, so you can imagine how I feel, a little scared, a little terrified on how these corridors are going to impact, the frontage roads, the local jurisdictions. Are we going to be able to even hold up to that? How are they going to get funded? Where's that money going to go? Can we receive extra money? And with the state limited to what we can get from just the state, notwithstanding federal money, it's a big issue. And we still have to move goods, and we still have food that has to be distributed throughout the state. So we have to look at everything in a wraparound perspective. So I really thank you for your presentation. I'm hoping that we can circle back to you and have you come back again, just like our other speaker. These are not subjects that we can just dismiss lightly. These are the core of what we really wanted to do. And I'm grateful for what happened. Oh. And I'm grateful for us being able to have someone have their mic on. Okay. Huh? Echo. Okay, so I just wanted to say this is great. I'm going to open it for public comment and see if there's anyone on the online that has a public comment.
I'm not seeing any public comment. Thank you.
All right, and since we have no public comment, do we have a comment in the dais? I think it could be safely said that we all are excited about that follow-up discussion. We're going to move right on to tab 12, which is our chair and vice reports. And for me, for the sake of time, I am going to just say really quickly, I am very, very happy to be part of such a beautiful collective of people that is in the space. I'm happy and honored that you guys came to my